Chapter 2502. Fuck. Fuck. What the fuck is going on? They were sitting on the second floor, eating and drinking tea. They were supposed to be elegantly watching from the sidelines. How did they end up in the eye of the storm? How did they end up in such a sorry state? The tables by the window were especially unlucky. When the blue spiritual cleansing flame exploded on the window, they were pitifully caught in the crossfire. They hurriedly scrambled back, not daring to stand by the window and watch the show. Bang! The saintess, Nya Yaoguang, crossed her arms in front of her chest. Her defensive spirit artifact took effect, forming a transparent barrier in front of her, blocking Arbor's attack. How dare you! How dare you attack the saintess? A guard captain suddenly rode his black wolf and charged toward Arbor. Crown Princess. Fong Su's eyes hardened. He was about to lead the forest guards forward, but the Crown Prince reached out and stopped him. How could this be? Fong Su looked with confusion at the Crown Prince, who was standing beside him with a solemn expression. With how protective the Crown Prince was of the Crown Princess, why would he stop them now? Trust her. Mo Lien only lightly spat out these 3 words. His gaze fell on the nimble little figure on the field. He had been following her up and down, not even glancing at the unlucky saintess. The man's features were picturesque. When he said these 3 words in a calm tone, it inexplicably caused a sense of trust to rise in people's hearts. It was as if the Crown Princess could solve all difficulties by herself. Fong Su took a deep breath, nodded, and took a step back. His eyes were still filled with curiosity. Wasn't the Crown Princess a genius pill master? Could it be that her cultivation was also, these are just a few flies? She can easily deal with them. Mo Lien's lips flashed with a faint smile. But this smile was too cold. Fong Su couldn't help but shiver when he saw it. It was over. What kind of bullshit temple was this? They had completely offended the Crown Prince. What should he do if he suddenly became excited? In any case, he wasn't the unlucky one. As a loyal subordinate, he only needed to follow the Crown Prince and watch the show. As the 2 people spoke, Xiaomu had already met up with that arrogant and insufferably arrogant guard captain who was galloping toward her on his black wolf. Good timing. Arbor roared, and a figure flashed across the dark sky like a stream. She stretched out a soft little hand and suddenly stepped on the black wolf's head. Then, she grabbed the neck of the guard captain with one hand. Fast as a bolt of white silk. Even lightning couldn't compare to it. Arbor's small hand held the other person's neck tightly, and a faint cold light flashed in his eyes. He pinched him like he was pinching a little chick. His expression was disdainful and as cold as ice. I am the source of the disaster that you speak of. The crowd was dumbfounded. He thought about the stoic-faced little girl's words and Saintess Nya Yaoguang's words. The source of the disaster. She was the source of the disaster? Ha! She was the Crown Princess. She was the Crown Princess who they had only heard of but never seen in person. The Crown Princess looked like she was 15 or 16 years old. She really was young. But her temper wasn't as delicate as her small body. She would explode at will and attack the people of the temple at the slightest disagreement. Heavens! Those were people of the Sun Moon Temple. Crack! That day, the head of the Sun Moon Temple guard captain was snapped in the little girl's hand. Everyone felt like they were going crazy. Chapter 2503. Oh my God! Murder! This is really murder, terrifying. They wanted to go home and find their mother. They had only come to worship the saintess of the temple, but they did not expect to find a murder scene. It was so bloody and brutal that everyone was so frightened that they only wanted to sneak back home. None of you are allowed to leave. Arbor roared. The little white snake on her wrist straightened its body and transformed into a ferocious snake head, roaring fiercely at the group of temple guards in front of it. Everyone was dumbstruck. The entire Changle Street was now enveloped by the little white snake's netherworld power. Everyone was trapped in the netherworld domain. Not to mention escaping, they couldn't even move their bodies. Their legs trembled and went soft. They all lay paralyzed on the ground, not daring to move at all. Sob, sob, sob. This time, the crowd really wanted to cry. If they had known, they would have been like their wives and husbands. They would not have come out to join in the fun and would have slept at home. Look at how they had come out to join in the fun. In the end, they might lose their lives here. Arbor's cold gaze swept across everyone present. The little girl with a cold face stood under 1,000 feet long great void serpent. She was as tiny as a speck of dust. She threw away the corpse in her hand and coldly swept her gaze across the group of temple guards who were retreating. She slowly raised her cold voice. If you are not afraid of death, then come at me. The temple guards gathered around their saintess, Nya Yaguang, as if they were facing a great enemy. They stared at Arbor in front of them with fearful eyes. The white snake beside this girl had such a terrifying aura. Could it be a divine beast? Everyone in the upper 3 continents knew that mystical beasts ran everywhere. Spirit beasts were common, divine beasts were rare, and sacred beasts were legends. From this, it could be seen that divine beasts were not something that everyone could see. Therefore, there was no way to compare. But this form, this aura, and this terrifying pressure, even if they had never seen a divine beast, they should be able to feel it. The terrifying pressure of this white snake was not something a mere spirit beast could emit. Saintess Nya Yaguang's face under the veil was ashen. She gritted her teeth and said coldly, "Don't go too far." Another priest beside Nya Yaguang said in a trembling voice. "That's right. Don't be too arrogant. How dare you attack our saintess? Do you know what the consequences will be? Ah." A blue spiritual cleansing flame suddenly transformed into a blue wolf, pouncing over and biting the cursing priest in its mouth. He chewed it in a few bites. In fact, it was just turning the arrogant priest into ashes. The saintess' face paled. Standing around her, the group of priests who were originally protecting her all widened their eyes in horror and took a few steps back, not daring to utter a single word. Their eyes were filled with deep fear, and their bodies were trembling non-stop. Many of these priests were just ordinary people. In the past, no matter which city they went to, they would always receive compliments and praise from everyone. When had they ever encountered such a sudden situation? So what if you are the source of disaster? Arbor's cold voice faintly rose on Changle Street. What can you do to me? Everyone's pupils constricted, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Chapter 2504. The little girl's aura was as sharp as a blade. Even though she was standing alone in front of thousands of temple guards, she still didn't show the slightest trace of fear. In front of absolute strength. You are just a bunch of pitiful ants. The stoic face's words were truly unpleasant to the ears. All of the temple guards were about to go crazy from her anger. Nya Yaoguang bit her lips tightly and glared hatefully at the girl in front of her. She said word by word, "Don't be too arrogant. Zhang." Slap. The instant everyone's hearts tightened, they heard the crisp sound of a slap. There was a distinct imprint of 5 fingers on Nya Yaoguang's face. At this time, the veil on her face had already been cut off by the little girl. Her fair, jade-like, charming face was flushed red, and her entire body trembled in the wind. Protect the holy nun. A temple guard sternly yelled. Everyone rushed toward Arbor like a tide. Arbor was as fast as a flash, swiftly passing through the heavily guarded temple guards. As long as she brushed past the guards who wanted to reach out to stop her, they would all be punched to the ground. The remaining people who wanted to surround her were swept away by the little white snake's tail and thrown heavily onto the street. Bang, 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 bang. Everyone only saw hundreds and thousands of temple guards being beaten to a pulp by the little girl alone. Many people were dumbstruck. They didn't know what words to use to describe this scene. Holy Nun Nia Yaoguang was instantly flustered and exasperated. A cold light flashed across her charming face. She summoned a long sword from her conchus and jumped forward to greet the little girl. Slap! Arbor backhanded another slap to the holy nun's other cheek. Nia Yaoguang was slapped so hard that he spun around on the spot. He was so angry that he leaned back. Bang! Arbor raised her leg and kicked her in the stomach. Nia Yaoguang only felt that the scenery in front of her was retreating rapidly. She flew out uncontrollably and landed heavily on the ground. The sound of the bang landing on the ground was so loud that it shocked everyone to the point of being dumbstruck. Their hearts were all thumping, and they subconsciously retreated backwards, revealing a large area in the middle. The sound of a pin dropping could be heard. A bunch of ants dares to boast shamelessly. Arbor sneered and stepped on the saintess's chest. Her originally towering chest was unceremoniously stepped on by the little guy. Saintess Nia Yaoguang felt a swelling pain in her chest. It was as if she was being suppressed by a powerful aura. She was so angry that she was trembling. You dare. Paw. You, aw. Paw. Paw paw. 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 Saintess Nia Yaoguang was speechless. As long as she said a single word, the little fella would slap her face. After dozens of slaps, even though the saintess used her spiritual energy to protect her body, her entire face was swollen like a pig's head. Does it feel good? Arbor stepped on her chest and slowly squatted down. He approached her and coldly stared at her. Does it feel good? Everyone, Mo Lien, Fong Su and Yunekut silently upgraded the little crown princess to the highest level of monsters that could not be provoked. He secretly warned himself that his previous decision was correct. Even if he had to offend his great crown prince, he absolutely could not offend the crown princess. If the crown princess said east, they had to go east. Oh. Chapter 2505. If the crown princess wanted to go south, they had to support her with all their might. Don't fucking blabber nonsense, understand? Whatever the little crown princess said was right. This was the first law of the divine continent. The two of them silently remembered this law in their hearts and regarded it as a golden rule. Not to mention, the rivers and lakes in the future had helped them avoid many disasters and blocked many difficulties. It had allowed the two of them to walk to the end and laugh at the heroes, but now, the two of them silently retreated a few steps and stood behind the crown prince. They coughed lightly and looked sympathetically at the saintess. This matter was not over yet. The little crown princess had a stomach full of anger. If she did not vent it out, it was hard to guarantee that she would not vent it on these pitiful people. So, yes, crown princess, vent your anger to your heart's content. Speak. Arbor grabbed the saintess by the collar and stared at her with a cold smile. Does it feel good? The saintess' face was red and she was so angry that she could not stop trembling. Trembling, and trembling. Her lungs should have exploded from anger at this moment. However, the little crown princess held her with an expression that said she would strangle her if she did not answer. She was the dignified saintess of the temple. She could be killed but not humiliated. You. Demon. Witch. Slap. Slap 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 slap. Dozens of slaps were thrown over and the saintess spat out a mouthful of blood. She was definitely angry. If I ask you a question, then answer me honestly. I hate it when people dilly-dally. Arbor picked up the saintess' head like it was trash and slammed her head heavily on the ground. That muffled sound fell heavily on everyone's heart. They thought that the saintess' head would be smashed like a watermelon by the little girl. Fortunately, the saintess used spiritual energy to protect her body. Her head did not shatter, but she lost a few teeth. Her mouth was full of blood and her originally white face was now completely unrecognizable. Saintess. Holy nun. A group of priests, together with the temple guards, wailed and wailed. They wanted to rush forward without a care for their own safety. Arbor coldly glanced at them and shouted, "Kill them." Hiss. The little white snake's eyes flashed with anger, and it suddenly swooped down toward the ground. Its huge snake mouth sucked, and these people were like dolls in a storm. They trembled with fear, and their eyes were about to split open as they rushed toward the snake's huge mouth, unable to control themselves. Aw! The onlookers were almost going crazy. What a terrifying demon that could chew a dozen people in one bite. Everyone fell on their butts and sat on the ground, trembling all over. No one can save you. Arbor's cold hand climbed up the saintess's neck. The saintess, Niayaguang, only felt as if a soft and cold poisonous snake had climbed onto her neck. Her entire body involuntarily shivered and curled up. Come, tell everyone. Does it feel good? Arbor's cold fingers deepened the strength on Niayaguang's neck. Niayaguang's tears flowed, but she still could not stop herself from nodding in fear. She stammered and let out a broken voice, "It feels good, it feels good." Mu Jingrui and Mu Xingchen stared dumbfoundedly at the scene before them. From the beginning to the end, it only took half an incense stick's worth of time. The little girl used this terrifying power to absolutely crush the saintess of the temple. There was simply no room for them to make a move. Chapter 25:06. Arbor raised her small hand high. The huge white snake was like a burst of green smoke, curling and shrinking. It once again coiled around her wrist and fell silent. The restrictions of the nether spirit domain had clearly been removed, but the entire Changle Street was still filled with a deathly silence. A heavy pressure, like the energy released by an ancient ferocious beast, pressed down heavily on the bottom of everyone's heart. No one dared to move a single step, and no one dared to whisper a word to each other. Silence spread on Changle Street. Who dares to make trouble on Changle Street? An angry roar exploded the silence at this time, instantly rescuing everyone from the spell of deathly stillness. Finally, there were a few traces of almost inaudible gasps from the crowd, and the frightened and painful sobs of women spread out. Under the Emperor's feet, Changle Street was very close to the Imperial Palace. It had always been a place where the Imperial Guards strictly checked. The person who came was a young man with slanted eyes and an aquiline nose. He led a group of soldiers and hurried over from one end of the street. When he saw the disorderly Divine Hall team, a trace of cold light immediately emerged from the bottom of his eyes. He roared at the surrounding people who didn't dare to breathe loudly. Who did this? The people in the front row were scared to death. Who dared to speak? They all shrank back a few steps, shrinking their necks and pitifully huddling together. They once again became the target of this soldier's anger. Whoosh! A blue flame whooshed and landed at the feet of the aquiline-nosed young man. The young man was shocked and subconsciously raised his feet and shrank back 2 steps. His cold gaze swept over and fell on Arbor. Are you blind? Why are you shouting at others? The aquiline-nosed young man narrowed his eyes maliciously. He sized up Arbor and coldly said, "Did you do it? Did you hurt the people of the Divine Hall?" How could it be? This little girl's cultivation realm looked like that of a little level 1 spirit master. How could she rely on her own strength to overturn the group of Divine Hall soldiers? If Arbor knew this guy's thoughts, she would certainly tell him mockingly, learn about the aura-concealing talisman. Walking outside, Jojo loved to act low-key. So what? Why don't you all grow a pair of eyes and not bump into me? Why did they have to go up one by one and get slapped in the face by Jojo? They deserved it. The people from the Divine Hall are honored guests of the Divine Prefecture. How dare you attack them? At this time, the priests of the temple finally came back to their senses. Looking at Arbor that was surrounded by the hook-nosed young man, a young priest swallowed his saliva, pointed at Arbor, and said sternly, "She is a sinner of God. This woman beat up the saintess of the shrine and killed so many disciples of God. She must be sentenced to death. Death penalty. Death penalty. He will be sentenced to death." The people in the Divine Hall roared with great emotion. The hook-nosed young man looked coldly at Arbor and pointed forward. "Catch her." A large number of soldiers rushed forward from behind the man. Just as the fight was about to break out, a cold voice came from behind the crowd. "I would like to see who dares to make a move." Fong Su waved his hand and rushed over with dozens of Greenwood guards. He punched the faces of the capital garrison soldiers. Several people stepped back in pain and covered their faces with their hands. They looked at Fong Su and his people angrily. The hook-nosed young man finally saw who Fong Su was. Chapter 2507. Commander Fong. His eyes narrowed. "Why are you here?" Fong Su looked at him with a fake smile. "I think you're really blind. Can't you see that my master is here?" Of course, the hook-nosed youth saw him. Behind Fong Su stood a magnificent and extremely handsome man. How could he not see him? It was just that he wanted to selectively ignore this person. Now that Fong Su reprimanded him with such a fake smile, he felt like his scalp was about to explode. The hook-nosed youth's neck stiffened as he turned his head to the side. When he finally met that pair of pitch-black phoenix eyes, his heart inexplicably thumped. The capital garrison is the responsibility of the Imperial Guard. Commander Fong, please don't bring the forest guards to casually intervene in this matter. The hook-nosed youth lowered his eyes and said coldly. Then, he raised his hand and ordered the Imperial Guard, "Arrest him." "Let's see how you're going to arrest him," Mo Lien interjected coldly and waved her hand lightly. On the eaves of Changle Street, tens of thousands of densely packed heads poked out uniformly. They were neatly dressed in dark purple heavy armor and held bows and arrows. They knelt on one knee and shouted in unison, "Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince." The sound of the sea was like layers of rolling waves, rolling over and over. The entire Changle Street was filled with such a sentence that made people's hearts surge and emotions surge. How could the people on the streets of Changle Street stand still at this time? They all knelt down in unison. Their faces were dumbfounded, and they didn't understand the situation. They lowered their heads and kowtowed heavily. The Purple Forest Guards. The most elite team of the Ming Guards Battalion. They were actually in the hands of the Crown Prince. At this point, Fong Su finally caught his breath and heaved a heavy sigh of relief. Fortunately, I chose the right team early on. Haha, otherwise, I would be the one in a daze right now. The 7 teams in the Emperor's hands, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple, could be said to be the most elite troops in the entire Divine Prefecture. How many princes and heirs in the imperial capital coveted this force? The emperor didn't give a single one. Sure enough, he gave it to his own son. His own son, even if his son had not been in the divine land for more than 10 years, so what? The great would give him everything he deserved. Fong Su was so excited that he took 2 deep breaths. His dog eyes lit up as he looked at his master's tall and straight back. At this moment, everyone felt that the crown prince's image was incomparably lofty, and everyone had to look up to him. The hook-nosed man also took a few deep breaths and finally faced the situation in front of him. In fact, Mo Lian's existence was very eye-catching. It could be said that the hook-nosed man's first glance landed on Mo Lian. However, he didn't want to admit it. How could a good-for-nothing who hadn't been in the divine land for more than 10 years still occupy the position of crown prince of the upper divine land? What ability did he have? What was his cultivation level? What contribution could they make to the imperial court and the people inside and outside the divine land? Not a single one. How could such a person become the crown prince as soon as he returned? However, reality proved that this person was not someone he could disown just because he wanted to. No matter how much he ignored him, the crown prince was the crown prince. No one could ignore him. The hook-nosed man raised his head and stiffly bent down slightly. He gritted his teeth and bowed. Deputy Commander of the Imperial Guard, Mo Zhuang, greets Your Highness the Crown Prince. Take him. Mo Lian narrowed her eyes and shouted coldly. Chapter 2508. Fong Su rushed forward with a few forest guards, grabbed Mo Zhuang's arm, and pinned him behind his back. Mo Zhuang raised his head and roared with a malicious expression, What does Your Highness Crown Prince mean? I just don't like you. Prince Mo's words made the hearts of all the commoners twitch. Take him. Beat him. These 3 words fell coldly and mercilessly. Fong Su's eyebrows twitched. He raised his arm and hurriedly grabbed Mo Zhuang's arm, slapped him in the mouth, and stuffed a pill used to seal spiritual energy into his mouth. In the next second, Fong Su kicked the hook-nosed man to the ground. Seeing that Mo Zhuang still wanted to struggle, the 2 forest guards raised their boards and pressed them down with 2 paw-paw sounds. Mo Zhuang was anxious, angry, and furious. The Imperial Guards below were even more furious and wanted to rush forward to save him. Mo Lian's cold words stopped everyone in their tracks. If anyone dares to disobey, kill. 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 The entire Changle Street was filled with the roars of the Purple Forest Guards. The Imperial Guards shrunk their necks in unison and peeked at Her Highness in fear. Then, they stopped. Paw. Paw paw. Paw paw paw. The sound of the boards hitting the ground resounded in the deathly silence of Changle Street. The commoners all lowered their heads and held their breaths. Even the sound of their breathing was deliberately lowered. They were really scared. The Crown Princess didn't even care about the Temple Emissaries group. And His Highness the Crown Prince was even more frightening. He didn't say anything, but once he did, he could easily decide someone's life or death. Both of them were people who stood at the pinnacle of power. They weren't people that small commoners like them could slander at will. Even if the temple emissaries spread rumors, it couldn't be spread through the mouths of these small commoners. Otherwise, with these 2 strict and arrogant methods, if they really wanted to pursue the matter, their entire families would die without a burial place. The only thing they could do was to keep their mouths shut and not talk nonsense like the disciples of the temple. After all, the divine halls could evacuate from the divine prefecture at any time, but they were still living on this continent and had nowhere to run. And now, there were many people kneeling on Changle Street who hated the disciples of the Sun Moon Temple for causing trouble. What bullshit source of disaster! The way they saw it, the people from the sacred palace were the source of disaster. If they hadn't spoken such nonsense and wantonly slandered Her Highness the Crown Princess, how could the Crown Princess have sealed off the entire Changle Street? How could the Crown Prince have been so furious that he had to take measures to suppress them? There were even people who had deep doubts in their eyes. This mysterious saintess had predicted that the Crown Princess, who was about to return, would be the source of disaster. Did she predict that she would be in trouble today? That she would be slapped so hard by the Crown Princess that even her parents wouldn't be able to recognize her? It seemed that she had not calculated correctly at all. What saintess of the temple? She was just bragging. The Sun Moon Temple, from top to bottom, is a group of frivolous and ignorant swindlers. Pass down my order, all the disciples of the Sun Moon Temple are to be flogged 100 times and imprisoned immediately. Don't. Please spare our lives, Your Highness. Your Highness, we know we were wrong. Please spare our lives, Your Highness. The disciples of the temple wailed in succession. Among these people, more than half were commoners. After 100 floggings, they were doomed to die. Chapter 2509. The young priest who had previously made a noise, fanned the flames, shouted slogans, and encouraged the ink pillars to catch Jojo and execute her. At this moment, he was hiding in the crowd like a quail, not daring to make a sound. But this didn't mean that Mo Lien was willing to let him go. He glanced over coldly, and his eyes were fixed on the young priest's body. Him. His slender finger pointed straight over. Mo Lien ordered with a cold expression, "Pull him over." The young priest trembled like a disheveled quail in the wind, his whole body was like a sieve, trembling and trembling. When the greenwood guard's hand pressed on his body, the priest rolled to the ground, repeatedly kowtowing and shouting, "Your Highness, spare me, spare me, spare me." This lowly one was just confused for a moment. This lowly one spoke without thinking, offending the Crown Princess. This lowly one is willing to apologize to the Crown Princess. As he spoke, he scrambled to Arbor, wailing miserably, "Crown Princess, spare me, Crown Princess. This lowly one is just an insignificant nobody, I simply can't enter your noble eyes." Just now, this lowly one spoke rudely. This lowly one can slap my own mouth. I beg the Crown Princess to spare this lowly one's life. As he spoke, the young priest reached out and lightly patted his face. With a cowering and wretched appearance, he kowtowed several times in succession. Xiao Mu expressionlessly glanced at him before abruptly kicking him several feet away. "Scram further away. Crying so ugly, you still want to gain sympathy. Kill him." This person was really hateful, hiding in the crowd, repeatedly saying things to incite the crowd's disgust, while he himself hid in the crowd and didn't show his face, a complete villain's behavior, incomparably disgusting. If he didn't kill him now, was he going to wait until the new year? "Everyone, my Crown Princess. You're going against the heavens." His Highness the Crown Prince said, "I don't like him, beat him." Their Crown Princess said, "Crying so ugly, kill him. The two of you are indeed a perfect match." Both of them were equally capricious and reckless, and their actions were both so hot that it was beyond one's expectations. The young priest was scared stiff. When he saw the greenwood guard come forward with a sword in hand, his whole body exploded with a frenzied rage, and he suddenly rushed towards Arbor. "Demonis, I'll kill you." Halfway through his words, he was struck in the chest by a sword. "What do you have to fight with her? You? Do you think you're worthy?" Prince Mo's eyes were cold as he pulled out his sword. His eyes were cold as he watched the man fall to the ground, no longer breathing. He took a step forward and tightly grasped Arbor's slightly cold hand. A fierce look flashed across his eyes as he said coldly, "Everyone, look clearly." This is the consequence of slandering and slandering my crown princess. Drag him away. Hang this person on the city gate tower. Flog the corpse for 3 days and 3 nights, grind the bones and scatter the ashes, and don't let them enter the coffin. Pass down the imperial edict and warn everyone. If there are any more slanderers, their entire families will be executed. No one will be spared. Prince Mo's cold and deep voice reverberated through Changle Street, causing the Greenwood Guard to bow his head. The entire city's citizens prostrated themselves on the ground in fear. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please calm down. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please calm down. Although the little girl was expressionless on the surface, her heart was definitely cold. Even a pair of small hands could be this cold. Mo Lien's heart ached, and he tightly held her small hands. It's him, it's all his fault. She encountered such a vexing matter as soon as she entered the capital. He was furious, and layers of killing intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. Chapter 25:10. When Hu Dequan saw the Crown Prince's current state, alarm bells went off in his heart and he thought to himself, this is bad. He had seen this kind of expression many times on the Emperor's face. It had to be said that the father and son were really like each other. Some of their subtle movements and expressions when they were angry were almost exactly the same. Naturally, he could not kill all the people of the Sun Moon Temple. The Crown Prince could punish them or kill some of them. It did not matter. After all, they had really slandered the Crown Princess. Could the Crown Prince not be angry? But if he killed all of them, then even if he was in the right, it would become unreasonable. After all, the Sun Moon Temple had come to Dragon Flame City to preach in the name of developing believers. Before this, they had naturally signed some treaties with the Emperor and made some concessions, which had benefited the people of the Divine Prefecture. But now, if the Holy Nun and the others were all killed as soon as they entered the capital, the Sun Moon Temple could use this as an excuse to make trouble. The temple's power was so great that it spread all over the 3 states. Although the Divine Prefecture was not afraid of them, if they really fought, it would really be a headache. Eunuch Hu was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. He cupped his fists and secretly bowed to Arbor, begging her to persuade the Crown Prince. Arbor glanced at him and gently tugged at Mo Lien's hand. Let me handle it, okay? Okay. Crown Prince Mo naturally wanted to do everything possible. If he could make Xiao Qiao's mood improve, he would do anything she wanted him to do. Arbor took a few steps forward and looked coldly at the Holy Nun, who was prostrating on the ground. The Holy Nun's hair was disheveled and her face was red. She did not look like the Snow Mountain goddess from before. Now, she was so miserable that she looked like a beggar on the side of the road, prostrating herself in front of a high and mighty girl. Her eyes were red with hatred and her fingernails dug into her palms. Did Tianyun ask you to do it? It doesn't seem like it. Tianyun's style of doing things should not be so reckless. After several dealings, Tianyun had always given her the impression that he would plan before acting. It was very difficult for him to do such a brainless thing. You did this on your own, didn't you? You think you can step on me? I didn't expect that the one who was really stepped on was you. Arbor looked at her coldly. If there's a chance, tell your master. I'm Arbor. I'm back. Come back, come back, come back. The saintess held her breath and her entire body trembled uncontrollably. Everyone only felt that these 3 words, Crown Princess, seemed to be lingering in their hearts. With a lingering charm she said calmly, no one in this world can stop me from moving forward. You can't, he can't. Heavens, no way. Not even the gods and Buddhas. The little stoic was expressionless, and her chilly voice reverberated throughout Changle Avenue, striking directly at people's hearts. I once told myself that I would return to the divine land no matter if it was my home or not. This day has come so quickly. I know that many of you are afraid, trembling in fear. But today, I'm going to tell you. It's useless. Whatever I, Arbor, want to do, no matter how difficult and dangerous the future is, no matter how long and rugged the road is, I will definitely do it. I'm back. All the people who tried to stop me, all the arrogant people, will pay the price in blood for what you have done. Chapter 25:11. The little stoic's tone was calm, and her every word resounded in everyone's hearts. Mo Lien really wanted to rush up and hug this little lady. He really couldn't bear to see her indifferent and contemptuous expression. He couldn't bear to see her erect a tall iron bastion and covered in thorns. He was used to seeing that lively little lady. He had clearly already pulled her out from under layers of ice and snow. This child in front of him was too heart-wrenching. He clenched his fists tightly, and his back stiffened and didn't move. However, he hated the Sun-Moon Temple to the bone in his heart. On the other side, Mu Xingqian was also still in shock. This was his first time seeing the little stoic calm and angry. Her joy, anger, sorrow, and joy seemed to be completely buried under that expressionless stoic face in that instant. Before this, regardless of whether she was angry or happy, she had a different expression. Even when she roared at him, "Who is she to you?" her expression also fluctuated. But now Mu Xingqian only felt his heart sink, and there was some pain in the tip of his heart. What kind of torment and sorrow would create this kind of girl? He didn't know why, but right now, he only wanted to bring this child home, properly protect her, love her, and not let her suffer the slightest bit of harm. Everyone silently hung their heads. They really wanted to look up at that little lady who shone like starlight, but they didn't dare to look up or make a sound. However, a faint trace of guilt rose in many of their hearts. On what basis could they wantonly open their mouths and casually slander others like this? Saying that others were the source of disaster, such a malicious reputation was pinned on a little lady who wasn't even 16 yet. Did this kind of temple really represent light and justice? Could it be that they didn't know what kind of harm this kind of accusation would cause to a person? They knew, but they still did it in the name of the 5 elements. If it weren't for the fact that the crown princess was powerful, wouldn't she have been slandered to death by them? Wouldn't she have suffered the condemnation and reviling of tens of thousands the moment she set foot in the capital? Shouldn't the crown princess retaliate? She deserved it. Shouldn't the crown princess fly into a rage? She deserved it. Shouldn't the crown princess send those who slandered her to hell? The commoners lowered their heads and felt that their hearts were heavy. It was unbearable. Doesn't the Sun-Moon Temple represent the gods? Arbor raised his hand coldly. 5 thunder spirit talismans jumped on his fingertips, flashing with a faint blue light. Since you're a god's disciple, you're blessed by the heavens. Naturally, you're not afraid of heavenly punishment. Arbor stared coldly at the holy nun who was prostrating at her feet. Hu Dequan opened his mouth. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He had a feeling that what the crown princess was going to do next would be extremely frightening. He was wrong. He shouldn't have begged the little crown princess to plead with the crown prince. The little crown princess's heart was not any softer than the crown prince's. What are you doing? The saintess angrily shouted. She was also shocked. She raised her head to look at the talisman flowing between the little girl's fingers, and a faint trace of fear appeared in her eyes. At least until just now, she was still very certain that the crown prince and his people wouldn't dare to kill her. But now, when she saw the young crown prince consort's inhumane gaze, she suddenly felt a bit uncertain. She was afraid. Her voice trembled as she stepped back. You don't act recklessly. Chapter 25:12. Our Sun-Moon Temple's forces in the 3 provinces, no, it's not like what you see. We scared? The little girl asked aloofly. Her eyes coldly stared at the beggar-like holy nun. What are you scared of? Aren't you God's emissary? Heaven will take care of you. Arbor said expressionlessly, and the lightning spirit talisman between his fingers suddenly leaped into the air. Don't worry, you will be with heaven. We will definitely endure heaven's punishment. Because you are God's emissaries, heaven's beloved children, the little stoic said with a smirk. Mu Jingrui shuddered when he saw this. He kept feeling that his little niece had intentions of developing in the direction of a pervert. Her gaze and tone were so calm that it made one's hair stand on end. Ah! Don't. The holy nun shrieked while trembling all over. Boom! A bolt of spirit lightning struck the crowd and immediately exploded, causing several people to vomit blood and faint. The temple's people were instantly thrown into chaos. No one cared about each other anymore. Who didn't freaking want to save their lives? They all fled in all directions. Kill whoever dares to run. The crown prince said coldly. The arrows hit the fleeing temple's people one after another, and the flurry of arrows forced the temple's people back into the center of the circle as expected. Not a single arrow landed on the commoners. Although the commoners were scared half to death, they quickly discovered that the Purple Forest Guard's archery skills were very valiant, and their hearts calmed down slightly. They didn't dare to move or speak. They only dared to lie down like this, not even daring to breathe heavily. Arbor said coldly. Don't worry, after the 9 bolts of spirit lightning, I will let you off regardless of whether you die or not. After all, even heavenly law wants to spare your lives. I, Arbor, naturally have to give face to it. After the little stoic said this coldly, she walked to the side and looked at the people who were struck by the spirit lightning. Hu Dequan had long been so scared that his head was drenched in cold sweat. When the cold wind blew, he only felt his sweat sticking to his clothes and shivering from the cold. The crown princess wanted them dead. The crown princess wanted everyone from the Temple of Light dead. These 2 edicts entered Hu Dequan's mind, causing him to tremble all over. He secretly glanced at the crown princess. He still didn't understand this young crown prince consort. All those who tried to hurt her and wanted her to die a horrible death would suffer her wrath. The crown princess would seek revenge on the spot. There was simply no room for them to breathe. Hu Dequan's pupils shrank as he watched the weak ants struggling under the bombardment of the spiritual thunder. Naturally, he would report everything he saw today to the Great Emperor. Of course, he would report everything to the Great Emperor with respect and reverence. Presumably, the Great Emperor would also begin to value this person's existence. Was this really the crown princess, who had a low cultivation and family background and was hard to be recognized by the Great Emperor? The crown princess, who stirred up a storm as soon as she entered the capital, didn't know that this old eunuch by the Great Emperor's side had developed a deep reverence for her and didn't dare to harbor any other intentions. As for Fang Su, who had long steadied his stance, he heaved a sigh of relief and patted his chest heavily. Thank goodness, I chose my side quickly and steadily. I really have to say, I'm wise. I knew that those who opposed this black-hearted couple wouldn't have a good ending. Chapter 25:13. Boom 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 boom. 5 lightning spirit talismans, each with 9 bolts of lightning, struck down at the same time. The sound of rolling and wailing on the field, under the lightning spirit talismans, continued for a long time. These 5 lightning spirit talismans finally eliminated nearly 200 temple guards, and that group of priests who were full of nonsense also met with great misfortune. The remaining people, more or less, were struck by lightning, each of them holding their broken limbs, rolling and howling. The holy nun was the person who was heavily favored by the lightning spirit talismans. At this time, after the lightning strike, her whole body was like a piece of dead wood, stiff on the ground, not moving at all. Arbor swept a glance at her, seeing that she was on the verge of death. Her gaze indifferently moved away from her body. Turning around, her brows indifferently looked in front, and her calm voice coldly said, "Let's go." Hu Dequan trembled as he took 2 steps to the side, his head hung low. Mo Lien rushed forward 2 steps, and tightly grasped her ice-cold, bone-chilling little hand. Arbor's eyes were slightly bitter, looking up at the man in front of her. The corner of her mouth drew a cold arc, forcing herself to let out a somewhat angry smile. Mo Lien's heart trembled. Suddenly ignoring everything, she stretched out her arms and pulled her into her embrace. Her slightly trembling hand gently stroked her little head. "If I don't kill others, others will kill me. If I don't resist, I will be like a withered lamb floating in the world, swallowed by the thick black fog, bite by bite. But I don't want it to be like this. I just want to live well. Work hard to live. More actively than anyone else, to live. Even like this, it's not allowed. Mo Lien, this is probably my life." They continued to resist, and they continued to kill. Fight, fight, fight. Fight until the last moment of her life. No. Mo Lien understood this little fellow's current state of mind too well. Every time she killed someone, she would fall into a deep self-loathing mood. She obviously didn't want to kill people, but in this world, there was always a group of people who didn't want her to live well. These people, what did they have to do with her? Did they know her? He didn't know him at all. What kind of enmity and hatred could motivate these people to make her bear the heavy crime of being a sinner for all eternity? If she was powerless to resist and turn the tables today, if this accusation were to spread across the entire divine land, what would the result be? Would she have a good ending? She just wanted to live a beautiful life with her lotus. Who was it to do anything to her? She did not want to become a little monster with thorns all over her body that would stab anyone she saw. But there was nothing at all. Why did they refuse to let her go? She did not want to be sick, but she was always forced to be sick. Since that was the case, she would fight to the death. If 1 came, she would kill 1. If 10 came, she would kill 10. If anyone wanted to make life difficult for her, she would make life difficult for them, her entire family. Even if the entire world is your enemy, I will still be with you. Even if I have to give up the entire world, I am willing to do so. What does all living things have to do with me? I won't let go. I'm holding on to you, and I swear I won't let go in this lifetime." Mo Lien tightly grasped her small hand, looking deeply at her with an abnormally resolute gaze. The little girl's tense emotions finally relaxed. Because of the warmth that poured into her heart, because of her lotus. She burrowed her head into his embrace and acted like a spoiled child in his embrace. The little stoic face finally crumbled and was replaced by soft sobs that also broke his heart. Chapter 25:14. It was good that she was in a good mood. Mo Lien's heart relaxed, and she raised a hand to gently stroke her hair. He turned around like a malicious spirit from hell, his expression cold and fierce as he pointed at the people from the temple. "All of you, go to jail. You can't leave without an imperial edict." "Yes." Fong Su and the others didn't dare to say anything else. Knowing that His Highness the Crown Prince was in a bad mood, they hurriedly bowed their heads and answered in unison. Mu Xingchen moved, but Mu Jingrui abruptly pulled him back. "Xingchen, let's go home first. We have to consider this matter at length. Jojo must be in a bad mood right now, so I think it's best if we don't show up." It had to be said that Mu Jingrui really had some self-awareness. He knew that the little girl didn't like their Mu family from beginning to end. He shouldn't make a move now and annoy the little girl. Mu Xingqian reluctantly looked in the direction of the carriage in arbor, his fists clenching and unclenching as he said coldly, "What's going on with today's matter? It looks like the Sun Moon Temple did it, but we still have to investigate the specific reason." Mu Jingrui hurriedly said, "Don't worry, I'll have someone investigate this matter. I'll tell you once there's news." On the other side. The Imperial Palace. In front of the table in the Imperial study. A middle-aged man with grave brows and a slightly pale complexion leaned against the back of the chair. There was a faint weariness on his face, but the corners of his mouth hooked up coldly. Hearing the news from the hidden guards, the man coldly glanced at Hu Dequan, who was kneeling in front of the desk. They returned to the Eastern Palace. Ah, yes. Hu Dequan only felt cold sweat trickling down his forehead. The people from the temple have all been jailed. Yes. Hu Dequan felt his throat dry up, and his entire body involuntarily trembled slightly. The Divine Prefecture's Emperor's voice was very calm, but it felt like a storm was about to come. Absolute nonsense. The Divine Prefecture's Emperor slammed the table heavily. How many people from the temple have died? Hu Dequan shuddered. About 200 to 300 people died under the spiritual thunder talisman, and many were injured. After that, His Highness the Crown Prince threw them into the water dungeon. Because of their serious injuries, the water dungeon was ice cold and they couldn't be treated. Half of them died. If you're so reckless, why did you only report it now? Was he the one who warned you? The great emperor didn't even need to think about it carefully. What a good son. The great emperor let out a long sigh and leaned back in his chair, looking even more exhausted. He waved his hand and said, "You may leave." Yes. Hu Dequan felt as if he had been granted amnesty and was about to leave. A familiar wailing sound was heard, and the old king of Giant Pain strode in with his short and chubby legs like a whirlwind from outside the door. He immediately fell to the ground and wailed dryly, "Your Majesty. I can't live anymore." The short wintermelon cried and howled. He threw himself to the ground, pounded the ground, and howled. Then, he looked up with a particularly expressive face. "I really can't live anymore, Your Majesty." "What's the matter? Get up and talk." The great emperor pressed his head with a headache, and his expression looked even worse. Although the king of Giant Pain's temperament wasn't very good, the Divine Prefecture's emperor always had a little more tolerance for this youngest brother. "The crown prince spanked my sons but in public as soon as he entered the capital." The king of Giant Pain cried and wailed. "Does the crown prince still see me as his uncle? If the crown prince really can't tolerate my son." Chapter 25:15. Then Your Majesty, please give this subject brother a piece of land and let this subject brother take his family and return to his hometown. Sob, 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 sob. The old king of Giant Pain was sobbing. The Divine Prefecture Emperor was a little embarrassed. Naturally, he already knew that his son had beaten up the eldest son of the king of Giant Pain, Mo Zhuang. Now that the king of Giant Pain was crying in front of him, he couldn't pretend to be deaf and mute. Cough. The Divine Prefecture Emperor coughed lightly. This child Mo Lien is indeed a little insensible. But he, just came back from a long journey. Perhaps, he's not in a good mood. King of Giant Pain, don't lower yourself to his level. The king of Giant Pain was instantly a little angry. Your Majesty, it's the crown prince who won't let my Zhuang off. Moreover, putting aside the matter of Zhuang my youngest son Mo Kun was also beaten up by His Highness the Crown Prince in Shantian Prefecture. Your Majesty, I really want to ask, what kind of grudge does the Crown Prince have with his biological uncle? Why does he like to beat up my son whenever he sees him? The Divine Prefecture Emperor, "Your Majesty, you must seek justice for this subject brother." The king of Giant Pain was sobbing as he sat on the ground and wiped his tears sadly. The divine prefecture emperor's head hurt terribly. He flicked his sleeves and called, "Hu Dequan." Eunuch Hu immediately trotted into the imperial study and bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty. Go to the Eastern Palace and invite the Crown Prince over." Hu Dequan, at this time, the sky was already dark. If he went to the Eastern Palace to invite His Highness the Crown Prince, would he be beaten out of there? The divine prefecture emperor saw Hu Dequan standing there in a daze and couldn't help but say angrily, "Why aren't you going?" Eunuch Hu shuddered and hurriedly agreed. He didn't dare to hesitate and used his spirit energy to fly all the way to the Eastern Palace. Today, Mo Lien and Arbor had just moved in, and the entire Eastern Palace was still busy. The master of the palace had not returned for more than 10 years. Although the Eastern Palace was cleaned every day, it still lacked the aura of a master. Now that their master had finally returned and brought the Crown Prince Consort with him, the Eastern Palace suddenly had 2 masters living in it. Just arranging the manpower to tidy up the Crown Prince Consorts and Crown Prince Consort's sleeping quarters made everyone extremely busy. When Hu Dequan walked in, the entire Eastern Palace was still brightly lit. Xiao Tingdong, who was in charge of the internal affairs of the Eastern Palace, was still busy shouting with his bulging belly. Aunt Jing stood to the side with a solemn and dignified expression, occasionally exchanging a few words with the little palace maids who came to report. When the 2 of them saw Hu Dequan running in, they were slightly stunned. Xiao Tingdong stepped forward and said with a smile, "Eunuch Hu, what's the matter? Go, go, go. What could I possibly want from you? Quick, go and invite His Highness. His Majesty has summoned him." Xiao Tingdong hurriedly asked, "What happened? Why did the great emperor summon me?" Hu Dequan wanted to be on good terms with the Crown Prince, so he quickly said in a low voice, "The Duke of Giant Pain has complained to the great emperor." "Your Highness." Xiao Tingdong walked to the door of the sleeping quarters and bowed. "The great emperor has summoned you. Hu Dequan, go back and tell him that as long as he doesn't acknowledge me as his wife, I don't want to see him for even a day." Scram! Hu Dequan, what should he do? If the old great king of the Mo Kingdom's personal eunuch, Gong Chang'an, was here, he would definitely laugh at him and pat him on the shoulder. He would say sympathetically, "It's not like our crown prince has only been willful for a day or 2. Just bear with it." Chapter 25:16. This servant is Kai Xiu. Kai Chi. Greetings to the Crown Princess. 2 delicate palace maids around the age of 18 or 19 bowed to Arbor, their attitudes extremely respectful. The young Crown Princess was currently drooping her small head, listlessly half lying on the red jade brocade couch. The Crown Prince was currently sitting by her side. Ever since they'd just returned, they'd heard His Highness the Crown Prince continuously teasing and talking to her. One moment, he'd give her this food, and the next moment, he'd use that food to coax her. This treasure was extremely rare. The way their masters interacted with each other made the 2 palace maids feel a bit surprised. For some reason, they felt as if their roles had been switched. Why was it His Highness the Crown Prince who was rushing to coax this young Crown Princess? This was because in their 3 continents, the existence of women was definitely weaker than men. This kind of situation would be even more vivid among cultivators. There was no other reason. On the Divine Continent, male cultivators were generally stronger than female cultivators. Even the heavens were 100 times harsher towards female cultivators than male cultivators. When cultivators broke through the final checkpoint of the spirit realm and ascended to the deity realm, the success rate of female cultivators in the 5 spirits reincarnation trial was only 1% of male cultivators. This established the irreversible supreme status of male cultivators in the 3 continents. Unless it was a few noble ladies from large aristocratic families or women at the peak of power, when they ascended to the spirit realm, they could rely on all kinds of magic treasures, spirit artifacts or divine artifacts that their families found to maximize their own ascension rate. If it was an ordinary female rogue cultivator or a woman from a small family, then sorry, these people would face thousands of dangers in their advancement. If they were not careful, they would probably end up with their bodies and souls destroyed. As a result, in the divine continent, female cultivators who could reach the deity realm were extremely rare compared to men. Many female cultivators, because they cherished their lives, would forever stop at the peak of the 15th level of Great Spirit Master realm. There were also quite a few people who existed. Because of this fear, a trace of a crack appeared in their hearts of cultivation. As they grew older, this feeling of not daring would spread throughout their entire bloodline. In the end, this group of people would sink into depression, never daring to take even half a step forward. Many women from small clans, if their talents were not bad, would be taken away by their clans to exchange for some resources and provide them to male cultivators as cultivation furnaces. They had no right to refuse. The family groomed you, and now they want to use you. What right do you have to refuse? This was the sorrow of the women of the small forces in the upper 3 continents. Therefore, it was already a very lucky thing for weak girls like Kai Xiao and Kai Chi to be sent to the imperial palace by their families and obtain a lifetime of peace. As long as the two of them served their masters well in the palace, worked hard to maintain a correct attitude, and did not make any mistakes, then the two of them would be able to survive until they left the palace. They would receive a sum of severance pay from the palace, and when they returned to their hometown, they would be able to buy a few mu of land and hire a long-term worker to farm. There was an 80% chance that they would be able to live out their remaining years in comfort. As for Kai Xiao and Kai Chi, they were both extremely dutiful and honest palace maids. Ever since they entered the door, the two of them did not dare to look around. They only respectfully saluted and stood to the side. When Arbor heard the sound, his eyelids only slightly lifted. He then waved his hand and said, "You may leave." Kai Chi and Kai Xiao glanced at each other. They did not understand their master's intentions, but they also did not dare to make wild guesses. They hurriedly lowered their bodies and slowly retreated out of the door. Chapter 25:17. Both of them felt uneasy in their hearts. They were afraid that they wouldn't be liked by the young crown princess. After all, judging from the current situation, the young crown princess was very favored by the crown prince. If she revealed any displeasure towards them, the crown prince would definitely dismiss them. The young crown princess looked very young, but they didn't know what her temperament was like. Looking at her indifferent attitude, could it be that the young crown princess was antisocial and not easy to get along with? Both of them didn't dare to make any wild guesses. After retreating, they stood guard at the door. Until Zhao Tingdong came over, bowed at the door of the bedchamber, and told them about the emperor's urgent summons. Both of them heard very clearly that the crown prince directly rebuked Eunuch Hu. Eunuch Hu's shoulders drooped, his neck shrunk, and he sighed as he left. However, Zhao Tingdong's eyes lit up slightly. It was as if he had discovered something incredible. This master of theirs who came from the 6 prefectures was truly willful. Kai Xiao and Kai Chi looked at each other and lowered their heads in silence, not daring to speak recklessly. Strictly adhering to their duties and not making any mistakes was their principle as palace maids. After that, the lights in the eastern palace were extinguished bit by bit. It was already late at night. After Eunuch Hu returned, the people waiting for news from all sides seemed to have quieted down. The emperor didn't send anyone else to summon them. The old king Jian Pain was comforted by the emperor, rewarded with many things, and left the palace in a huff. Today's matter quickly spread to the ears of the major forces in and out of the imperial court. They were all shocked and horrified. Judging from the emperor's attitude towards the crown prince, it seemed that he was very indulgent. It seemed that the imperial capital was finally going to be overturned. The next morning, the warm sunlight outside the window climbed through the long wooden window lattice and shone into the bedchamber. The crown prince's bedchamber was naturally extremely luxurious and exquisite. Whether it was the table, chair, bed, cabinet, or even the small teacups and utensils, all of them were the finest in the palace. Just that red sandalwood crystal mysterious jade bed alone was something that the great emperor had ransacked the entire treasury. He didn't think that there was anything good about it, so he specially ordered people to use precious materials to forge it for more than half a year before he was able to forge it. This craftsman was a famous divine artifact forging grandmaster in the 3 prefectures. Then, he had specially made a bed for the crown prince. This was simply a waste of natural resources. Jojo lazed in bed until noon. When the sun shone through a curtain of pearls, agate and emerald beads and fell on her eyes, she slowly crawled out of bed. The little fellow stretched with all his might and raised his tightly clenched fists above his head. For a moment, he froze there. She hurriedly put down her small hand and looked at the 2 girls kneeling in front of her bed with a puzzled expression. For a moment, her brain seemed to have short-circuited. "Who are you?" She hurriedly wrapped herself in the blanket and looked at them warily. She raised her eyebrows and asked, "Where's my husband?" Husband. She was referring to the crown prince. Kai Xiu's temperament was calm. She quickly stepped forward and kowtowed, "This servant is Kai Xiu." Kai Chi. Greetings to the crown princess. Regardless of whether the emperor acknowledged this little crown princess or not, all the palace servants and eunuchs in the Eastern Palace, from top to bottom, all addressed her as the crown princess. Because of the crown prince's acknowledgement, who would dare to provoke him? It was just a title. There was no need to make things difficult for their master. Chapter 25:18. The little fellow's short-circuited brain was somewhat connected. Ah, Kai Chi, Kai Xiu. She seemed to have heard this name yesterday, but when the other people introduced themselves, she was not in a good mood and was too lazy to respond to them. "You 2 are palace maids from the Eastern Palace, right?" "Yes." Caixio slightly breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly said respectfully, "This servant and Saichi were assigned by Aunt Jing to serve the crown princess's daily life as personal palace maids. If the crown princess feels that us 2 are not enough, or if you have any other requests, you can directly tell Aunt Jing." At that time, "Oh, there's no need." Arbor waved her little wrist. She was not a particular person. 2 palace maids were already too much to serve her, so why would she ask for more people? "Yes." Kai Xiu breathed a sigh of relief again. She was actually quite afraid that this little crown princess would look down on them and casually ask them to scram. In any case, there were plenty of palace maids in the imperial palace. Even if the crown princess did not like this batch, with her status, she could recruit another batch of palace maids at any time. There were plenty of various small families and aristocratic families who racked their brains to send their daughters into the imperial palace. Kai Xiu's temperament was calm and her words were dull. She was very afraid that her master would not like her. But looking at the current situation, she was afraid that she had already passed the first hurdle. Kai Chi's temperament was more lively. Seeing this, she hurriedly said with a smile, "Crown Princess, let us servants serve you to wash up." Arbor blinked, "Where's my husband?" Kai Chi hurriedly lowered her head respectfully and said, "You must be talking about His Highness the Crown Prince." His Highness went to the study early in the morning. Several old officials came to pay a visit to His Highness. "Oh." Arbor nodded her little head. She lifted the soft quilt and jumped down from the bed. The 2 hurriedly stepped forward and let the little crown princess wash up and change her clothes. However, the little crown princess didn't need their help. She did everything on her own. Seeing this, the two girls heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that their master would be fussy and difficult to serve. However, from the looks of it, although the little crown princess's personality was a bit cold and she didn't speak much, she was very kind to the two servants and didn't put on any airs of a master. "Crown princess, what kind of hairstyle do you like? Let's do it in a simple and relaxed way." The young crown prince consort sat in front of the dressing mirror. Her small, jade-like face seemed to be shrouded in a layer of pearl light. Her skin looked both delicate and fair, truly an indescribably beautiful sight. The two palace maids both inwardly inhaled. No wonder His Highness liked this crown prince consort so much. She was truly too beautiful. In the entire upper three provinces, it would be difficult to find another girl who could be compared to the little crown princess. After thinking for a while, Kai-Chi tied the little crown princess' hair into a cloud bun. Her technique was very skillful. Moreover, it wasn't the cloud bun that followed the trend. She made some small improvements to this bun. Because the little crown princess was too young, her long hair looked a bit old-fashioned when she tied it up. Kai-Chi's modified bun made the two strands of black hair by her temples into two small braids that hung over her shoulders. This made the little fairy in the mirror look more lively and playful. Finally, she inserted the heavenly phoenix purple jade hairpin that the young crown prince consort had chosen, and put on a pair of light purple beaded flowers on both sides of the hairpin. This way, a charming little beauty stood gracefully in the mirror. Kai-Chi's dressing speed was very fast. The little crown princess was also very satisfied with this simple and elegant appearance. Chapter 25:19. Seeing her expressionless face, Kai-Chi's heart pounded. She braced herself and asked, "Crown princess, do we need to change it again?" There's no need to change it. Very good. The little crown princess said with a stoic face. Kai-Chi heaved a huge sigh of relief. She walked to the dozen or so large chests in the corner of the room and said, "Crown princess, these clothes and accessories were just sent over from the production room and the treasure room last night. Your servant hasn't had time to take care of them yet. There's also some furniture that will be sent over from the production room in the next 2 days. Crown princess, what do you want to wear today?" Kai-Chi asked tentatively. The little crown princess waved her small hand. "Anything is fine. Something simple will do." Kai-Chi finally understood what was going on. It seems that our little crown princess likes to start simple. She doesn't want to do anything too complicated in the future. Arbor thought for a moment and said, "I want to wear red today." She wants to wear a fiery red battle suit. I'll kill whoever dares to cause trouble. Yes, Crown Princess. It's good that the Crown Princess is willing to state her request. Kai-Chi quickly rummaged through the chests and found a dress made of red ostrich feathers and a white rabbit fur cloak. The red was like fire, and the white was pure. At first glance, the two palace maids were dazzled. Heavens, who wouldn't like such a quick-witted and adorable young crown prince consort? Crown Princess, the meal is ready. Please come this way. Sir Jojo followed the two palace maids out of the bedroom and went to the side hall to eat. Along the way, the palace maids and eunuchs they met all bowed their heads respectfully. They didn't dare to look around recklessly. Sir Jojo was somewhat satisfied. It seems that the management of the Eastern Palace is good in general. At the very least, Auntie Jing and Eunuch Zhao should be able to suppress these people with their authority. As long as they did not bother Jojo Sama would not care too much about them. Greetings, Crown Princess. Greetings, Crown Princess. Along the way, people bowed and saluted. Arbor just glanced at them and entered the side hall under the guidance of Kai Chi and Kai Xiu. The two round tables were already filled with food. Xiao Mu found a seat and sat down. She furrowed her brows as she looked at the dozens of sumptuous snacks and side dishes on the table. Who sent it? The little crown princess asked calmly with an expressionless face. If Feng Su and Eunuch Hu were here, their hearts would definitely skip a beat and they would cry out in alarm. The calmer this little crown princess was, the more expressionless her face was, the more restless her heart was. Kai Chi didn't know what was going on, so she bowed and said, "It was Eunuch Lee from the kitchen. He brought a few palace maids with him." The crown princess nodded. "Call them over." Kai Xiu's heart skipped a beat. She smelled a trace of something unusual. Without waiting for Kai Chi to speak, Kai Xiu quickly bowed and said, "Yes." Then she quickly walked out of the door and whispered a few words to the two palace maids guarding the door. When she walked into the side hall again, she saw the little crown princess sitting at the table. She didn't even touch her chopsticks. Although she was expressionless, it felt like the pressure on her body had dropped a few notches. The two palace maids lowered their heads obediently and didn't dare to speak. They just stood behind the little crown princess. After a quarter of an hour, the palace maids outside the door came in to report that Eunuch Lee from the kitchen had brought people over. Chapter 25-20. "Kneel outside," Arbor said coldly. The little palace maid was slightly taken aback, but she didn't dare to be negligent. She hurriedly went out to pass on the crown princess instructions. The little Eunuch Lee in the kitchen looked to be in his early 20s. His entire person carried a bit of a ruffian aura, and his eyes were always restless. After hearing this, the little Eunuch Lee couldn't help but be taken aback. A trace of displeasure flashed through his eyes. "Why?" "Kai Xiu, slap him," the little crown princess said calmly. Kai Xiu's heart skipped a beat, and her heart thumped like a drum. She knew who this little Eunuch Lee was. He was the third in command of the Imperial Household Department, the godson of the head eunuch, Eunuch Lee. Usually, when he went to the various palaces, there were many palace maids and eunuchs who flattered him to please him. For Eunuch Lee's sake, no one dared to be impudent to him. Everyone in the entire Divine Prefecture knew that after the Emperor and Empress fell into a coma more than 10 years ago, the Emperor didn't take in any more concubines. The entire harem was actually very quiet. Except for some nameless women who were forcefully stuffed into the harem by various small countries every year, the Emperor only had the head palace maid and outstanding talent as his companions. Everyone thought that the outstanding talent would probably one day become a concubine, but today, more than 10 years later, the outstanding talent was still only the head palace maid by the emperor's side. The outstanding talent was nearly 40 years old this year. To be honest, those unknown women who were stuffed into the harem every year might not even live as well as palace maids and eunuchs who had a little power. For example, this little Eunuch Lee could get whatever he wanted under the care of the head eunuch. Today, when he suddenly heard the crown princess say that she wanted to slap someone, even he was a little stunned. Slap. The little crown princess swept a cold glance at Kai Xiu. This glance made Kai Xiu's heart skip a beat again. She immediately realized that if she disobeyed the crown princess today, then she would no longer be of any use as a maid. Kai Xiu fiercely gritted her teeth, stepped out of the side hall door, and came in front of little Eunuch Lee. "How dare you?" Little Eunuch Lee's eyes almost shot out a poisonous light. He stared at the little palace maid in front of him like a poisonous snake spitting out a cold letter. She was just a little girl who was not recognized by the great emperor. The people in the Eastern Palace took advantage of the situation and called her the crown princess. Did she really think that she was the crown princess? Paw! Kai Xiu fiercely slapped little Eunuch Lee's face. This time, little eunuch Li's mouth was crooked. Little eunuch Li screamed. He was like an angry wild wolf. He raised his fist and punched at the little palace maid in front of him. Kai Xiu closed her eyes, calmly waiting for the arrival of death. This eunuch Li Jr. in front of her had a higher cultivation than her. She was merely a small level 8 mystic cultivator at the very bottom. In front of so many big shots, this kind of cultivation was practically negligible. However, after waiting for a long time, he didn't feel any pain. She opened her eyes and looked at little eunuch Li, who had a stiff arm and was standing in front of her like a clay puppet. His expression was slightly distorted, and her eyes widened in astonishment. Little eunuch Li was immobilized by the immobilization talisman and naturally couldn't move. His clenched fist made cracking sounds, and he was powerless to resist at this time. What an imposing manner. You still dare to retaliate. The crown princess's cold voice sounded from inside the room. Beat him 50 times with the paddle before dragging him here to talk. Chapter 25-21. Young eunuch Li clenched his teeth in hatred, but he couldn't move at all. Kai Chi went outside and called 2 Eastern Palace guards in. Without saying a word, they lifted young eunuch Li up and pressed him down on the bench. The planks fell with a crackling sound. Young eunuch Li was forcefully pressed down and the planks fell on his body. He lost all his dignity, and his face turned red as he screamed. Young crown princess was dressed in red, and her features were exquisite and unadorned. She walked out of the side hall and stood on the long steps, looking down at young eunuch Li, who was being punished, with an expressionless face. There were many palace maids and eunuchs standing in the courtyard, but none of them dared to make a sound. They all cautiously lowered their heads and looked down. After 50 strikes, the 2 guards dragged little eunuch Li from the bench and threw him on the ground without any force. Then they raised their hands in salute to the crown prince consort and quietly retreated to the side. Arbor coldly looked at the person lying on the ground. She formed a hand seal and waved her hand, immediately undoing the binding of the body-securing talisman. Young eunuch Li found that he could move and immediately struggled to stand up. He glared at Arbor and angrily said with a dark face, "What is the meaning of this?" "Bring the food out," Arbor said coldly. Kai Chi and Kai Xiu hurriedly directed a group of palace maids to bring out the dozens of dishes on the table. Arbor casually picked up a plate of fried pumpkin and threw it at young eunuch Li's face. Young eunuch Li was shocked. He subconsciously leaned to the side and avoided the plate attack. Who knew that this young crown princess would throw the plates at his face one after another? Plates of porridge, noodles, and soup splattered all over his face, making young eunuch Li battered and exhausted. The palace maids who came with young eunuch Li were already trembling in fear. They knelt on the ground and didn't dare to raise their heads. Ah! Young eunuch Li was about to explode in anger. You! Let him eat. Clean it all up, Arbor said coldly. There was no warmth in his words. This little crown princess looked at little eunuch Li with mockery and coldness. She slid her finger and ordered the 2 guards standing at the side to go forward and escort little eunuch Li to eat the food on the ground clean. Congee, noodles, and all kinds of exquisite snacks, buns, and pastries were all stuffed into little eunuch Li's mouth by the 2 guards. Ah, wretch! Little eunuch Li felt that his mouth was full of something cold. Once it entered his mouth, he felt nauseous and wanted to vomit. How could the 2 Eastern Palace guards give him a chance to vomit? She kept stuffing food into his mouth until eunuch Li's eyes rolled back and his limbs trembled. When Zhao Tingdong heard the news and rushed over, little eunuch Li had already been tormented by the 2 guards to the point that he almost fainted. Zhao Tingdong hurriedly stepped forward and bowed to Arbor. This servant, Zhao Tingdong, greets the crown princess. The young crown princess looked at him expressionlessly. Go and call over the head eunuch of the kitchen. Yes. Zhao Tingdong immediately responded and sent a capable young eunuch to summon the head eunuch of the kitchen. Zhao Tingdong usually had a good relationship with the head eunuch of the kitchen, Eunuch Sun. At this time, he could only secretly break out in a cold sweat. From the looks of it, the young crown princess was quite angry. This matter probably couldn't be settled peacefully. Chapter 25-22. Eunuch Sun was nearly 60 years old and had a stocky build. When he walked, he looked like a tiger stirring up the wind. After hearing the summons from the Eastern Palace, Eunuch Sun was also at a loss. However, he did not dare to carelessly neglect this crown prince consort and hurried to the Eastern Palace with the young eunuch leading the way. As soon as he entered the garden of the Eastern Palace, he saw little eunuch Li being dragged to the ground by 2 guards. The eunuch's stomach was already bulging from the food he was stuffing into his mouth. His heart inexplicably sank, and a layer of cold sweat immediately formed on his palms. He hurriedly went forward and greeted, "This servant, Sun Ba, greets the crown princess." The young crown princess glanced at him coldly. Kai Xiao. At this moment, Kai Xiao completely understood the young crown princess's meaning and also knew why the crown princess was angry. At this moment, she was also trembling with fear because she and Kai Chi hadn't noticed this problem previously. If the crown princess wanted to hold them accountable, then it would be due to negligence. Now, she could only quickly atone for her mistake. She took a deep breath and hurriedly walked over with a bowl of bird's nest porridge. She handed the bowl to Eunuch Sun, the manager of the kitchen. Eunuch Sun, all the breakfast that the kitchen sent over just now was completely cold, just like this bird's nest porridge. Please take a look. That can't be. Eunuch Sun was shocked. He took the bowl and touched it with his hand. It was indeed so cold that there wasn't a trace of heat. The weather was so cold, yet the crown princess had to put these cold things into her mouth. The weather was extremely cold, but sweat had seeped out of Eunuch Sun's forehead. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and explained, "Crown princess, please understand. This servant can guarantee that the food was definitely warm when it came out of the kitchen. Moreover, on the way to the Eastern Palace, we used insulated food boxes to ensure that the food sent to each palace and courtyard was warm. Therefore, the reason why the food was so cold was definitely because someone had tampered with it. Was it the cold utensils that caused the food to become cold faster?" Eunuch Sun's gaze was filled with disgust as he looked coldly at little Eunuch Li, who was lying on the ground. Just now, he had felt that this person was a little pitiful, but now, it seemed that he deserved it. He was the one who wanted to offend the crown princess, so why drag him down with him? She was going to die because of him. "Little Li, what is the meaning of this?" Eunuch Sun said angrily. "Why are you doing this?" Eunuch Li Jr. straightened his neck and ate a stomach full of cold food. Now that his stomach was rumbling, he said impatiently, "Eunuch Sun, what did this servant do?" "This servant is just here to deliver the food. Even if the food is cold, can't this servant bring it back and reheat it? Is it really worth it? Do you really think you're the high and mighty crown princess? She's just a woman who was brought up from the lower star area and is the crown prince's plaything. She's just an unpresentable thing. She doesn't know how to look at the big picture. She's so arrogant that she wants the whole world to know." Slap. A gust of wind from a palm came from afar and landed heavily on Xiao Li's face. Eunuch Li Jr. was hit so hard that 2 of his teeth fell out. He looked back with a face full of horror. Mo Lian viciously strode in from outside the atrium like a gust of wind. Without allowing for any explanation, he stomped on this person's ribs more than a dozen times, each kick landing heavily on this person's weak spot. The pain caused little Eunuch Lee Jr. to spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. He rolled on the ground and howled as he trembled. What is this? How dare you be so impudent in the Eastern Palace? Chapter 25-23. Mo Lien stepped forward and grabbed the little fellow's hand. She coldly glared at the eunuch rolling on the ground and sternly reprimanded, shouting Dong. Why yes, this servant is here, this servant is here. Zhao Tingdong was so frightened by the crown prince's stern rebuke that his legs turned to jelly. What are you doing? Letting a lowly servant like this run amok in the Eastern Palace. Do you still need this crown prince to teach you how to handle this kind of matter? Why yes. Zhao Tingdong quickly nodded in response and instructed the two guards beside him, hurry, hurry and take him away. A harsh glint flitted through Zhao Tingdong's eyes, and he couldn't help but ridicule little Eunuch Lee in his mind. This servant actually dared to point at the crown princess's nose and scold her for taking advantage of him. Who exactly was the one taking advantage of her without knowing it? Take him away. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please calm your anger, Crown Princess. Another voice came from outside the door. Eunuch Lee, the eunuch in charge of the Internal Affairs Department, had also come after hearing the news. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the situation in the court, and he hastily rushed forward to salute. Your Highness, please calm your anger. This is all a misunderstanding. Little Lee didn't mean to offend the Crown Princess. The Crown Princess is benevolent and magnanimous, so she definitely won't bicker with a little servant like him. What did he mean by that? He was setting a trap for Jojo. If she dealt with this little servant today, she wouldn't be the benevolent and magnanimous Crown Princess. Unfortunately, setting a trap was useless. Sir Jojo had never been one to follow the rules since he was young. Arbor expressionlessly tugged at the corner of his mouth. Kill him. A black shadow abruptly descended from the sky and slit little Eunuch Lee's throat without any explanation. After killing him, that person acted as if nothing had happened and turned to kneel on one knee with a grin. He said loudly, Huifeng greets Your Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Mo Lien nodded. It was easier to use people on her side. Do you have any leads on Yu Xiao and the others' whereabouts? Mo Lien couldn't help but think of a question when she saw Huifeng. Yu Xiao and the others, along with Situ Yi and the rest, ever since they followed Jojo to Shuntian Prefecture, according to Jojo, they had completely disappeared, like bubbles disappearing without a trace. Yes, there are clues. Huifeng cracked a smile. They've had great encounters. Right now, half of them are in Fire-Smelting City, and the other half are in Icebound City, cultivating. Sir Jojo looked over curiously and asked, Flame City? No, Crown Princess, it's Fire-Smelting City. Huifeng felt that there was a great need to educate his Crown Princess. The four great cities that transcend the three provinces. Glory City, Shadow City, Inferno City, and Icebound City. Arbor replied with an "oh" and didn't say anything else. Huifeng's mouth involuntarily twitched. Wasn't the Crown Princess the least bit curious? Why were her companions in Fire-Smelting City and Icebound City? Didn't she want to know what kind of encounters they'd had in Fire-Smelting City and Icebound City? Why did the super calm Crown Princess look a bit adorable with her stoic expression? Mo Lien glanced at Huifeng. Give me a detailed report later. Oh. Huifeng drooped his head. No wonder the Crown Princess wasn't anxious at all. Because she knew very well that Prince Mo would definitely tell her everything he knew after reading the report. Moreover, since Huifeng said that they'd had great encounters, what was there to be anxious about? Their days must have been pretty good. Chapter 25-24. The three of them were talking among themselves and had long abandoned the bystanders. However, Eunuch Li from the Internal Affairs Department was so angry that he nearly fainted. Even now, he still felt his heart trembling, and he couldn't catch his breath. The Crown Princess actually didn't give him any face at all and killed his godson just like that. After killing him, she acted as if nothing had happened and didn't even look at him. Li Hongchuan was so angry that he was trembling. When he lowered his head and saw Xiao Li lying in a pool of blood, his vision turned black and he felt dizzy. This was, but Mu Estate Tinglan Courtyard. Eldest young master, you can't just barge in like this, eldest young master. Scram! Mu Xingchen kicked the maidservant in front of him, causing her to stumble and crash into the courtyard's door. He strode into the room. Mu Jingrui also hurriedly followed and advised, Xingchen, we still don't understand the actual situation. Don't get angry first and see what it is. Hey, who are you people? How can you barge into Mrs. Boudoir? Madame Li had just returned home from a tooth feast. As soon as she entered, she saw two tall men barging into her Tinglan small courtyard. Madame Li hurriedly glared at them and angrily shouted. Mu Xingchen pursed his lips and swept Nei Li to the side with a flick of his sleeve. With a dark expression, he quickly walked to the boudoir in the courtyard and kicked without any explanation. Boom! Xiao Yingchen, who was lying on the bed and groaning, jumped in fright and hastily poked her head out from the canopy. She saw a tall and straight man walking against the light to her bed. When she saw this youth's appearance, Xiao Yingchuan's eyes couldn't help but light up, and a dazed expression appeared in her eyes. Who was this handsome man in front of her? This was a certain young master from the Mu family, right? Was he here to see Yingchen? Xiao Yingchen had the same problem again. She couldn't take her eyes off Mu Xingchen. When Mu Xingchen saw her, his handsome face turned even darker. He quickly walked up to her and unceremoniously pulled her down from the bed. Mu Jingrui hurriedly called out from behind, Xingchen. Who are you? How dare you pretend to be my younger sister? Without another word, Mu Xingchen gave Xiao Yingchen 2 tight slaps. Poor Xiao Yingchen. Her swollen face had yet to recover. This time, it was really an injury on top of an injury. Feeling the pain on her face, she cried out involuntarily. Moreover, she felt that the scene in front of her was extremely familiar. Once, there was a very handsome man who barged into her court. After seeing her, he beat her up without any explanation. She still hadn't fully recovered from the injuries on her body. Concubine Shi had sent people to take a look many times. Every time she thought of Concubine Shi saying that she had missed this banquet, missed that meeting, missed this handsome young master, missed that mighty and domineering young general, her heart felt like it was dripping blood. How many opportunities would she miss to show her face? How many opportunities would she miss to climb up the social ladder? Big brother. Xiao Yingchuan's mind turned very quickly. When she heard how Mu Xingchen addressed him, she immediately understood that this person in front of her should be Arbor's long-lost big brother. She hastily called out, Big brother, don't hit big brother. Who's your big brother? Mu Xingchen threw her to the ground and reached out to summon a lightning talisman to strike her. Mu Jingrui, wait, Xingchen. There was one more thing. Chapter 25. Boom! A bolt of spiritual lightning struck down. Xiao Yingchuan's eyes bulged, and she let out a miserable howl before falling to the ground with a thud. Shi Huixin hurried over. When she rushed in with her men, she saw a disheveled Xiao Yingchen rolling back and forth on the ground, howling miserably. She was so angry that her nose was about to become crooked. After waiting for about 8 to 10 days, this woman's injuries were finally mostly healed. She originally wanted to bring her to Madame Zhong Li's plum blossom banquet tomorrow and let her show her face in front of everyone, but she didn't expect to encounter this kind of incident. She quickly went up to stop Mu Xingchen and gave Nanny Zhu a look to check on Xiao Yingchuan's injuries. Nanny Zhu flipped Xiao Yingchuan over to take a look, and her face almost became crooked from anger. Xiao Yingchuan's face was as black as coal after being struck by lightning, and her entire head and face were covered in blood. She looked even more miserable than a few days ago. "Eldest young master, how could you do this? That's your younger sister. How could you be so ruthless? Even if the two of you didn't grow up together, can you bear to cut off your blood ties? You're so ruthless. Look at how badly you've beaten your younger sister." Shi Huixin was filled with anger and had nowhere to vent, so she gave Mu Xingchen a good lecture. "Someone, throw this impostor out of the Mu residence. Don't let her take half a step into the Mu residence again." Mu Xingchen didn't care about concubine Shi's attitude and directly gave the order. Two Mu residence's shadow guards immediately came out from behind and dragged the trembling Xiao Yingchuan up. "Ah! Big brother, big brother. What are you doing? Big brother." Xiao Yingchuan screamed and hugged the leg of the stool tightly, unwilling to let go. Madame Li rushed in and sat on the doorstep, howling, "Io, everyone, come and take a look. The Mu residence's eldest young master is going to chase out the young miss who was left stranded outside. Io, there's no justice in this world. The Mu residence is committing murder and arson." "Shut up." When Mu Qingya rushed over, she saw such a mess. Madame Li sat on the doorstep and howled while slapping her feet. The eldest son, Mu Xingchen, was angered by this old woman's shrewish behavior. His handsome face turned slightly green. Seeing this situation, she was so angry that the blue veins on her forehead almost popped out. She shouted at the group of old maids accompanying her, "What are you waiting for? Why aren't you gagging this old woman and dragging her out? Ah, what are you doing? Are you guys trying to murder me for money? Ouch!" Madame Li was still howling when she was slapped in the face by an older female servant. Madame Li's head was slightly tilted back and her mouth was immediately filled with the taste of blood. Xiao Yingchuan was also scared silly. She hurriedly pounced over to hug concubine Shi's leg and wailed, concubine mother, save me. Big brother can't tolerate me. Auntie, auntie. Woo woo woo. I can't live anymore, auntie. Big brother wants to kill me. Ah! Shut up. Mu Qingya said angrily. Shut up. If you were to let these shrews spout nonsense, would the young master's reputation still be intact? If word got out, people would think that even the young master of the Mu residence couldn't tolerate his biological younger sister. A cold glint shot out of Mu Xingchen's eyes, and he turned to glare at concubine Shi. Shi Huixin, I don't know what you want to do by bringing such an impostor home. But if you want to harm my younger sister, even if I don't want my life, I won't let you off. The 10th watch ended. Chapter 25-26. Concubine Shi smiled awkwardly. Look at what eldest young master is saying. Why would concubine harm eldest young master's younger sister? Look, isn't this, don't think that everyone is a fool. Mu Xingchen flung away concubine Shi's outstretched arm and looked at her coldly. You must know very well what this woman's identity is. Shi Huixin carelessly stroked her hair and said with a smile, eldest young master must be joking. Concubine is merely bringing Miss back from Seacone planet to reunite with our family. I don't want others to misunderstand my good intentions. In all honesty, concubine really doesn't have any selfish motives. Mu Qingya frowned and said, concubine Shi, help Miss to the bed first. Xingchen, come with me. Mu Xingchen's handsome face was cold as he followed Mu Qingya out of Tinglan's small courtyard. Mu Qingya sighed and turned around with a rather solemn expression. Xingqian, your actions this time were truly too reckless and impulsive. What good will this do for your reputation? If this matter were to spread, what would it look like? Those outside who don't know the truth will only think that you can't even tolerate a younger sister who has led a wandering life for many years. Mu Xingqian said angrily, how can she be my younger sister? That slut is simply an impostor. I won't admit to her identity. Mother, why is it like this? Mu Xingqian couldn't help but grumble inwardly. Why didn't concubine Shi immediately chase her out the day you brought her back? Even if others don't know, mother should know that this person is an impostor. Xingqian. Mu Qingya shook her head and said with a wry smile, the day concubine Shi brought her back, she spoke so confidently and solemnly. She even paid a visit to your father and found 2 more witnesses to prove it. We can only discuss this matter at length. If we want to chase this impostor out of the house, we still have to find some evidence. What evidence? Wouldn't father know? Mu Xingqian sneered. Wouldn't it be clear once we take out the bloodline talisman? We'll know whether or not she's of the Mu family bloodline with a test. Mu Qingya was slightly taken aback, then she revealed an ecstatic expression. Right. Why didn't mother think of that? That fake would naturally not be able to pass the test of the bloodline talisman. Mu Qingya said with a smile, however, I need to go to your father personally and have a good talk with him. Go back to your own courtyard first and wait for my notice. Mu Xingqian thought for a moment and nodded slightly. On the other side, Mo Lian had already finished flipping through all the fortuitous encounters of Situ Yi, Wei Nanfeng, and Yu Xiu. It had to be said that this group of people was really lucky. Coincidentally, they were picked up by the city lords of Fire Smelting City and Ice Sealed City who had gone out to train and brought back to raise them, so don't always say that Jojo is lucky. There are many people who are really lucky. From the looks of it, Jojo's little bit of luck was nothing. If the heavenly Tao was here, he would definitely give this fellow a tight slap. Bah, your little bit of luck is just short of reaching the heavens. Little bit of luck. If this is little bit of luck, then there are really no people with great luck in this world. After flipping through the information, Mo Lian looked at the recent events in Dragonflame City, big and small. When her finger stopped at a few documents titled, The Mu Family's Wandering Girl Returns. Chapter 25-27. Mu Qiao has returned home. The Mu family's long-lost Miss Mu Qiao has finally returned home. Mo Lian's eyes could not help but narrow dangerously when her finger paused on a row of similar information. This Mu Qiao couldn't be the one he was thinking of, right? He reached out to flip open the neatly arranged information and quickly skimmed through it. Mu Estate's Gilded Garden. Mu Qingya carefully wrung a wet handkerchief and gently handed it to her husband, Mu Jingfeng, who was sitting beside her. A faint smile appeared on Mu Jingfeng's grave and stern face. He took the handkerchief and wiped his face before casually asking, I heard that Xingqian went to Ting Lan's courtyard to cause trouble today. Mu Qingya sighed. This child is still too impulsive. I've already lectured him. Husband, don't scold him anymore. You're always protecting him. Mu Jingfeng glared at her. He's the Mu family's young master and someone who will bear the responsibility of the entire Mu family in the future. We can't indulge him too much. Mu Qingya smiled. Look at what you're saying, husband. Xingqian doesn't need us to worry about him. He's very sensible. There's a reason for today's matter. If it weren't for concubine Shi, Mu Qingya could not help but bite her lip when she saw Mu Jingfeng's gaze drifting over, swallowing the latter half of her sentence. After contemplating for a while, she finally could not help but speak up again. Husband, Xingqian suggested to me today that he wanted to use the bloodline talisman to test that young lady in Ting Lan's courtyard. Mu Jingfeng glared at her and said in displeasure, "Nonsense. You want to open the ancestral hall to ask for a bloodline talisman for such an insignificant matter?" Mu Qingya tried to persuade him, "Master, how can this be a trivial matter? This is also a major matter that will shake the ancestral bloodline. I think you've also been muddled by Xingchen's words. You believe him when he says that person isn't his younger sister? There can't be any mistake with someone brought over from Sikong planet." Mu Jingfeng casually waved his hand. "There's no need to mention this matter again. He's been running around all this time and hasn't seen any improvement in his cultivation. Tell him to go into seclusion and cultivate properly. Don't always think about those nonsensical things of the secular world." "Master." "Enough." Mu Jingfeng nonchalantly swung his sleeves and got up to leave. His grave and stern face was abnormally cold. An hour later, Mu Xingchen received the news. He sat in his study room and crushed a jade porcelain brush washer. "Young master, madam said that this matter cannot be rushed. She will find an opportunity to persuade the master again," the servant standing in front of the desk said with a trembling voice. This was the first time he had seen his young master so angry, as if he wanted to tear everything in front of him apart. He knew at a glance that that bitch wasn't his daughter. Mu Xingchen said angrily. As he said, with his father's eyesight as the head of the Mu family for so many years, what could be hidden from his eyes? "Young master." The servant was almost scared to death. He's the one who wants to keep the fake. It was him who did not want to see Jojo. That's why he didn't want to open the ancestral hall and experiment with the bloodline talisman. That coward. What did my Jojo do wrong? Why should she bear all of this? "Young master." The servant looked like he was about to faint. Please, please. Could he not scold the head of the household like this in front of a tiny ant like him? Life was so precious, he really didn't want to die so early. Chapter 25-28. This man would rather raise an impostor as his daughter than see his own daughter. Mu Xingchen clenched his fists tightly and spat, "Extremely stupid." He should have known that he could only do things that the man agreed to. How could concubine Sure have the guts to bring an impostor into the Mu family? It was obvious that the man agreed to it himself. He did it on purpose, deliberately turning a blind eye and deliberately suppressing the fact that the impostor's origins were unknown. Only in this way would the Mu family not pursue the origin of the counterfeit goods and accept the existence of the counterfeit goods. Mu Xingchen was so angry that his eyes turned red. "Coward, even if you don't want to see Jojo, you don't have to make an impostor to annoy yourself. He doesn't mind spending money to raise a slut, but I do mind that the slut's existence dirties the entire court." The manservant lowered his head and completely treated himself as heir. He hoped that the young master would let him go. He didn't hear anything. "I won't let this impostor occupy my sister's position." Mu Xingchen's eyes revealed a cold glint. Young master, what are you doing?" The servant really wanted to slap his own mouth. Why the hell was he stuttering when he spoke? "Don't be a coward." He had to advise his young master not to court death. In this situation, it was obvious that he was going against the master. That was courting death. "Jiangdu, what are you thinking about?" "Ah." The page boy looked at Mu Xingchen in confusion and hurriedly said, "Young master, I am thinking of how to persuade you to put down your butcher's knife." Mu Xingchen glanced at him. "Butcher's knife?" Yes. Don't think that I don't know." "Young master, you want to sneak into Ting Lan's courtyard in the dark and directly slit that girl's throat." Mu Xingchen sneered. "You know your master quite well." Why yes." The page boy hated that he couldn't slap himself again. "Who asked you to speak so much and spit out everything in your heart?" Young master, don't be rash. The page boy hurriedly hugged Mu Xingqian's leg and cried, Young master, let's not do such impulsive things. Ah! If the owner of Ting Lan's courtyard is dead, you will be the first suspect. After all, we just had a conflict with them. If word gets out that he's the murderer of his younger sister, his reputation won't be good either. Don't doubt it. I did it. Mu Xingqian sneered. However, when he went to Ting Lan's small courtyard again, he found that it was already empty. After careful inquiry, it turned out that the fake had been taken away by Shi Yinyang to Wulong Garden to recuperate. Recuperating was just a pretense. The main reason was to prevent this fake from being killed in Ting Lan's courtyard for no reason. Mu Xingqian sneered. Concubine Shi was really worried sick about this fake. At the door of the study, a small head poked out and then shrank back. Mo Lian could not help but laugh. She put down the documents in her hands and said softly, I've already seen you. Why are you still hiding? The little fellow bounced inside in a trot, and Mo Lian stretched out his arms to carry her into his embrace. Hungry? The little girl nodded and looked up at him with a pair of round eyes. I really want to eat hot roasted sweet potatoes right now. Okay, I'll roast a few for you. Mo Lian reached out to pinch her little nose and said with a grin, what a greedy little kitten. With a wave of her hand, she took out a small stove and 4 to 5 sweet potatoes from her inner world. Chapter 25-29. Mo Lian was now completely in his element when it came to cooking. This simple roasted sweet potato was naturally very familiar to him. As long as he controlled the heat well, he could just place the sweet potato on the stove and flip it over to roast it after a while. What were you looking at just now? Sir Jojo asked curiously. He reached out to grab the information he placed on the side. Oh, is it information on Situi and the others? Did they really go to Fire Refining City? And half. It was also a coincidence that they went to Fire Refining City and Icebound City, but it's also because their talents are pretty good. Arbor nodded his small head. Those little fellows' talents were naturally pretty good. If they had lived in the Divine Province since birth in a place with such dense spiritual energy, their current strength would probably have broken through to great spiritualist long ago. However, they came more than half a year earlier than her, so presumably, they were no longer rookies like great mystic cultivators. At the thought of meeting them again and being able to see her little fellows rapidly improve their cultivation, Miss Chiao couldn't help but faintly look forward to it. It's not information on Situi and the others. Sir Jojo casually picked up a piece of information on Mu Chiao's return and stared at it for a while like he had seen a ghost. There was a fake who was taken back to the Mu family. Mo Lian sneered and raised his hand to take the piece of information from Arbor's hand before casually tossing it to the side. The Mu family is such a large family, so they definitely know whether it's their own bloodline or not. It's impossible for them to be so easily confused, unless that muddle-headed patriarch of theirs doesn't wish for me to return in the first place and would rather deceive himself by raising an impostor. Xiao Mu curled her lips coldly. Speaking of which, I don't care for that lousy Mu clan either. However, I should take back what belongs to me. Xiao Mu raised her head to look at the crown prince before leaning close to his ear and muttering. Mo Lian nodded as he listened. When the old man acknowledges you in a few days, I'll have him write it when we meet. Don't worry, it won't be long before the old man gives in. Xiao Mu blinked her large eyes and nodded. Okay. The two of them chatted for a while more. After a while, Mo Lian increased the heat and roasted a few sweet potatoes. The young couple was peeling the sweet potato and eating it when Zhao Tingdong's respectful voice came from outside, reporting to the Crown Prince, Crown Princess. Madame Zhongli sent an invitation for the plum blossom meet. Arbor took a bite of the sweet potato and asked curiously, "Who is it?" Mo Lien's expression was indifferent as she said, "General Zhong Li's wife." She loved lively events, so every few days, she would hold a small banquet and invite all the noble ladies. "If you don't want to go, then don't go. We don't have to do anything for her." Arbor's eyes swiveled. "Say, do you think that imposter will go?" Mo Lien couldn't help but be startled. He had read the detailed information, so he naturally knew that the young lady who impersonated Jojo had been violently beaten up by an unknown person the night she returned to the Mu residence. That was why she hadn't had the chance to come out after being back for so many days. She had been recuperating at home every day. With his subordinate's influence, he naturally could effortlessly find out who the person who had violently beaten up the imposter was. Of course, there was no need to let Jojo know that eldest Qin had stood up for Jojo and beaten up the imposter. Humph, there was no need for him to make a move. Logically speaking, that imposter should be attending tomorrow's plum blossom meet. Mo Lien nodded. Didn't that concubine sure from the Mu family bring her back to stir up trouble? Chapter 25-30. General Zhong Li's wife held a plum blossom banquet, and there were many noble ladies who gave face. If concubine Shi's original intention was to let the imposter replace Jojo, she would definitely not let go of this opportunity to show her face. "Then I'll go." Sir Jojo nodded vigorously and said, "I'll go and meet this imposter." Mo Lien nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go with you, you're not allowed to go." The little fellow immediately reached out to cover his mouth and blinked cleverly. "You're too eye-catching, you have to hide at home." There were a bunch of women in that place, what was there to go, what was there to go? Sir Jojo was going to fight, don't worry, he would definitely return victorious. Mo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reached out to pull down her little hand and kissed her soft little hand. "Don't worry, your husband is only yours is only yours." How could this man be so flirtatious? Sir Jojo couldn't help but reach out to pinch his face. He reached out to hug him and muttered, "That's right, it's mine." Mo Lien couldn't help but be amused. He hugged and rubbed her for a while before saying to Zhao Tingdong, who was waiting outside the door and didn't dare to breathe loudly, "Go and make arrangements. Send the crown princess to the banquet tomorrow." "Yes." Zhao Tingdong immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that the time he had been waiting outside the door was so long that it almost made him cry. The imperial palace, the Empress Dowager's chamber, Little Li is really dead. Empress Dowager Qin sat under the warm blanket, looking a little puzzled. This old lady was already over 70 years old. She had a round and well-maintained appearance. Compared to her real age, she was naturally at least 10 years younger. The nanny who accompanied the old lady immediately nodded when she heard this. "Yes, does the Empress Dowager want to summon that crown princess?" Empress Dowager Qin pondered for a while and shook her head. "Let's wait and see." The little crown princess that Mo Lien brought back, regardless of whether they recognized her or not, seemed to be someone that Mo Lien had set his mind on. From the looks of it, he was quite a powerful figure. As soon as he came back, he dealt with the people of the Divine Hall on the street, beat up Mo Zhuang, and then killed Little Li in front of Eunuch Li from the Imperial Household Department. TSK, what an amazing person. It's said that Eunuch Li fell seriously ill after he returned. He still can't get out of bed. Sigh, how pitiful. Tell the Imperial Physician Building to send him more tonics so that he can recover. After all, the number of old people in the palace is decreasing day by day, Empress Dowager Qin said with a sigh. Empress Dowager is merciful. This servant will go and instruct them. Empress Dowager Qin nodded and took a cup of bird's nest from the palace maid. She said lightly, "Baojia is immature. Go back to the Qin family and you will know what to do. Yes, this old servant will do it immediately. Please rest assured, Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Qin nodded. She tiredly waved her hand and had everyone leave. Until she was the only one left in the palace. She lay there in silence for a long time. In the end, she couldn't help but scold the idiot. The Qin family was declining day by day. The children in the family were not promising in their official career or cultivation. If it weren't for her and her eldest nephew who supported the Qin family, Empress Dowager Qin sighed. She felt her body was a bit heavy. After all, she was old. She thought that if it were a few decades ago, she wouldn't be so cautious. Really, she had to admit that she was old. There were shadows outside the window. The room inside the window was silent. Chapter 25-31. It was close to noon. 6 black stallions with shiny black fur trotted across Changle Street and turned left towards Kongla Street. Every inch of this land was worth its weight in gold. Unless one was an important official or an influential family, one really did not have the financial ability to settle down in Kongla Street. To be honest, if one was not an influential family, they would not be able to afford to live in Kongla Street. Therefore, Zhongli's residence was able to occupy the most eye-catching location on Kongla Street. The residence was 3 to 4 times the size of the other residences. Compared to the residences of the princes on Changlu South Street, it wasn't inferior at all. When the Eastern Palace's carriage appeared in front of everyone, it caused a small commotion. When the people of Zhongli's residence received the news, they immediately went out to welcome them and arranged for the Eastern Palace's carriage to enter the residence directly and not stop outside. The person who came to welcome the carriage was Zhongli's eldest young madam, the eldest daughter-in-law of Great General Zhongli. She led 2 rows of servants and very respectfully welcomed the Eastern Palace's carriage into the residence. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the inner courtyard. Arbor did not need anyone's help and walked down the carriage on her own. Her quiet gaze fell on the dignified and elegant eldest young madam at the front. Zhongli's eldest young madam led the servants to kneel in greeting and said with a smile, "The Crown Princess has graced our humble abode with your presence. Your presence brings light to our humble abode." Seeing that she was still polite, Miss Chiao suppressed her thoughts of picking a fight with her. If you obediently don't find trouble with Jojo, Jojo will not find trouble with you." Zhongli's eldest young madam unexpectedly raised her eyes to look at the Crown Princess and could not help but suppress her stunned expression. The little Crown Princess in front of her was really too cold and elegant, with a hint of playfulness amidst her elegance. With 2 symmetrical buns on her head, she looked like a little paralyzed and adorable. Under her scarlet cloak, the red brocade collar wrapped around her slender little neck and blended her fair and jade-like face with the fluffy fur. She was really very beautiful. Xiao Mu waved her hand to have them stand up, and then she trotted into the main hall. Eldest young madam personally led the way and said with a smile, "Mother-in-law originally wanted to personally welcome Her Highness the Crown Princess, but your imperial aunt, Qin Wang Fei, just happened to enter the fu, so mother-in-law really couldn't leave." Arbor nodded and had no intention of making trouble. The host was holding a banquet to admire the plum blossoms, so naturally he had invited all the princes and madams of the influential families in the city. It was inevitable that they would be busy with welcoming the guests, so there was nothing much to say. Moreover, this Zhongli manor could be considered to have done things properly. Sending the great general's eldest daughter-in-law to welcome her was not considered a slight. Madame Zhongli was 7 or 8 years older than the Crown Princess. She thought that young people would have more topics to talk about when they were together. Who knew that the Crown Princess was a stoic person of few words? Come to think of it, no matter who the facial paralysis was, they didn't have much to talk about. Thinking back to when she was a fake servant girl in the Qin estate, wasn't she also not very popular? I don't understand why he's so unpopular. Sir Jojo wrinkled his small nose. On the side, however, eldest young Madam's heart was beating like a drum. Looking at the little stoic's cold face, her mood was a bit perturbed. The Crown Princess was unhappy. The Crown Princess has arrived. After the announcement was made outside the door, the hall fell into a uniform silence. The stoic face expressionlessly walked in through the door, and the gazes of the several people sitting in the hall uniformly turned towards her. What a little beauty with a jade-like face and pearl-like skin that could be broken by the slightest breeze. Chapter 25-32. The eyes of the women in the hall, each with their own thoughts, flickered a few times. As the madam of the main household, Madame Zhongli was respectfully accompanying Princess Consort Kong. When she saw the young crown princess enter, she hastily stood up and saluted. Greetings to the crown princess. Accompanying Arbor into the main hall were Aunt Jing, Caixio, and Saichi. At this time, Caixio and Saichi curtsied and stood to the side. Aunt Jing stepped forward and whispered to Arbor, "This is Great General Zhongli's wife." Arbor glanced indifferently at Madame Zhongli and nodded. With her status, there was no need for her to return the greeting to Madame Zhongli, that is Princess Consort Kong, His Highness the Crown Prince, and your Imperial Aunt. Arbor looked at Princess Consort Kong curiously. She could be considered to have a good understanding of the Mo family's current imperial relatives. According to the relationship chart Mo Lien gave her, the one who had the closest relationship with the Emperor was this Prince Kong. Nowadays, the Emperor entrusted Prince Kong to handle major court affairs and matters that needed to be handled personally. He greatly relied on and trusted this elder brother of his. Prince Kong was the Emperor's eldest brother, so according to seniority, he was naturally her and the Crown Prince's imperial uncle. And this plump and somewhat unhealthy royal consort in front of her was her imperial aunt. Arbor blinked. On the other hand, Princess Consort Kong couldn't sit still anymore. She and Prince Kong had no children in their entire lives. Later on, they adopted a daughter born by her maternal sister-in-law, but she wasn't to her liking. When she saw the little stoic for the first time today, she thought she was incredibly adorable. This child was simply too lovable. This was that child Mo Lien's wife. Good job, good job. She was so much better than that domineering woman his father found for him. This little fellow looked like a soft and adorable little bun at first glance. Ayaya, she was truly adorable. The two small bags on her head were matched with two simple and generous pink beaded flowers. It was bright and beautiful to the point that it was just right. She didn't have any extra accessories on her head. She looked good, she looked really good. When Princess Consort Kong saw the little stoic, she found her especially pleasing to the eye, and a smile involuntarily spilled onto her chubby face. Come, come. Come here, come here. Aunt Jing was stunned. She was naturally familiar with this Princess Consort Kong. For female officials like them who worked in the palace, even if they didn't know the temperament of the members of the imperial family like the back of their hand, they had more or less heard about it. For example, this Princess Consort Kong usually did not like to get close to people. Don't be fooled by her smiling face, she was actually very unapproachable. Many noble ladies wanted to flatter her. After all, Prince Kong was the most powerful official in the court. But not everyone was able to gain Princess Kang's favor. Now, when the little crown princess walked in, she didn't even say a word, but Princess Kong took notice of her. It can't be. Everyone silently muttered in their minds. When they turned their heads to look, they saw the little crown princess pattering over to Princess Consort Kong with small steps. When Princess Consort Kong took a closer look, she became even more attracted to her. This little fellow's small appearance was too good-looking. Looking at that sparkling small face and those spirited, pitch-black eyes, TSK, where did Mo Lien pick up this little wifey from? It couldn't be that he had run into an enormous stroke of luck, right? Princess Consort Kong grabbed Arbor's small hand and said with a grin, "Good child, I'm your imperial aunt. This is our first meeting, and imperial aunt doesn't have anything good on her, so you can wear this for fun." Chapter 25-33. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. Princess Consort Kong was being too modest. She had given a rare treasure like the exquisite fire brocade bracelet to the little crown princess to play with, and she still called it nothing good. Everyone knew that Princess Consort Kong had a cold constitution since she was young. This exquisite fire brocade bracelet was a protective bracelet that the old prince had found a master craftsman to make after traveling all over the country. It was a fire elemental defensive artifact, and it had the function of warming the body when worn. More importantly, this bracelet was a space bracelet. Because Princess Consort Kong was an ordinary woman without any cultivation or spiritual sense, the old prince had spent a lot of effort to find a special material to add to the exquisite fire brocade bracelet so that it could be used by her. Therefore, ordinary people could also use this defensive artifact and open a space, but the princess consort could not form a contract with it. But now, Princess Consort Kong had actually given a divine artifact to the little crown princess, whom she had just met, without batting an eye. Wasn't this too exaggerated? According to the norm, the little crown princess should be blushing modestly and giving in a little, right? Jealousy flashed through the eyes of a young girl sitting below Princess Consort Kong. She felt as if she was sitting on pins and needles. Her buttocks twisted slightly on the stool, and she bit her pale lips, looking like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. However, what made everyone's jaws drop was the little crown princess had actually reached out to receive the gift so openly, and then very naturally put it on her little hand. Since the exquisite fire brocade bracelet was a divine artifact, it had the ability to stretch and shrink. The moment it was in her hand, it fit her wrist. And the next thing that made everyone's eyes pop out of their sockets was the little crown princess had actually dripped her blood into her spiritual sense, and very smoothly formed a contract with the exquisite fire brocade bracelet. Haha! Her actions were so damn fast. The exquisite fire brocade bracelet space was really not small. It even contained some of the princess consort's personal collections, such as antiques, calligraphy, paintings, jewelry, jade, and so on. There was also a small mountain of spirit coins piled up. At a glance, there were probably tens of millions. Jojo inexplicably felt happy as if he had made a small fortune. Strange. Why would Jojo be interested in such a small amount of money? The girl sitting below Princess Kong immediately jumped up from her stool and pointed at Arbor as she screamed angrily, "Rude! You, how dare you? You actually contracted with the exquisite fire brocade bracelet." Princess Consort Kang's smiling face instantly froze. She turned to sweep a glance at the long-faced girl and said with a frosty expression, "Shut up." Since the bracelet was given to the crown princess, it naturally belonged to the crown princess. Wasn't it normal to have a contract? Iran, you're really becoming more and more unruly. Sit down. Lu Iran bit her lips and sat down with a twisted and resentful face. Her hands twisted the silk handkerchief as if she wanted to tear it apart. Princess Consort Kong glared at her fiercely, thinking to herself, as expected, she's not presentable. Didn't he usually reward her with a lot of things? This small family was very much like a sister-in-law, wanting to take all the good things. The little crown princess merely cast a glance at Lu Iran, then treated her as heir and let her go. She took out a palm-sized square box from her inner world and handed it over to Princess Consort Kong. "What is it?" Princess Consort Kong stared blankly, then couldn't help but smile. A gift in return for the elders. The little crown princess spoke for the first time since she entered the family. Princess Consort Kong was over the moon from the little fellow's coaxing. However, the other people in the room had mixed feelings. Chapter 25-34. Ha ha ha. Princess Consort Kong laughed heartily as she held Arbor's little hand and rubbed it lovingly. Little fellow, you're really a good child. Our Mo Lien is truly fortunate to be able to marry you. Arbor nodded her little head in full agreement. She felt that Princess Consort Kang's taste was especially good. She herself also felt that she was pretty good. Lien was truly very fortunate to be able to marry her. The old and the young chatted happily there. Most of the time, it was Princess Consort Kong who was talking alone. The little crown princess asked her 18 questions, and she would pick one or two and answer simply with 4 or 5 words. The strange thing was that the two of them could actually continue chatting in this kind of chatting mode. If it were anyone else, they would have died from the conversation long ago. On the side, Louis Ran was so angry that she was about to vomit blood. She kept cursing Princess Consort Kong, this old thing, in her heart. She had waited on this old thing day and night in vain. She had asked for the space bracelet hundreds of times but failed to get it. Yet, this old thing had so easily given it to a woman she had just met. Louis Ran's lungs were about to explode from anger. She felt aggrieved and resentful in her heart. She sat on the side like a vengeful spirit, glaring at Arbor with her glowing white eyes. If looks could kill people, Louis Ran would have already shot her thousands of poisonous glares and killed the little girl. Madame Zhongli interrupted with a smile at the right time. Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess really hit it off at first sight. That's right, that's right. Princess Consort Kang's attitude towards Madame Zhongli wasn't bad. She wasn't particularly distant and cold, nor was she very affectionate. It was just a formality. Now that she saw Madame Zhongli speak, Princess Consort Kong said proudly, "Look at how good this daughter-in-law that our Mo Lien found. She has the looks and temperament. She doesn't lack in cultivation or intelligence." Everyone, Princess Consort Kong, aren't you bragging a bit too much? She does have the looks and temperament, but how can you judge this girl's intelligence when you've only interacted with her for less than a quarter of an hour? Furthermore, this little crown princess's cultivation wasn't particularly high. At a glance, he looked like a low-level spirit master. Was his cultivation high? But then again, as the high and mighty crown princess, there was actually no need for her to cultivate. After all, there were secret guards protecting her wherever she went. Everyone thought to themselves as they glanced at the little crown princess. It was truly difficult for Princess Consort Kong to continue chatting so eloquently in front of such an expressionless, paralyzed-faced Jojo. Sama was the kind of person who, if you insisted on chatting with her, would continue to chat with you politely. Even though she only exchanged a few words with others, "I'll call you Jojo from now on. Jojo, if our Mo Lien bullies you in the future, feel free to tell Imperial Aunt. Imperial Aunt will take care of him for you. Imperial Aunt will definitely stand by your side." Jojo thought about it seriously. He can't bully me. It had always been Lord Jojo who bullied him. Jojo, Sama was Lien's little emperor baby. Wasn't it normal for him to listen to Lord Jojo's words and actions? It was impossible for him to bully the little emperor. However, not long after he said this, Lord Jojo had the urge to cry. As expected, he couldn't be too full of himself, because retribution would arrive in minutes. Lord Jojo would soon be slapped in the face. Chapter 25-35. Jojo and Princess Consort Kong had a warm chat for a while until the servants came to report that Princess Consort Jing had arrived. Only then did everyone let out a slight sigh of relief. They wiped the sweat from their foreheads and thought to themselves, fuck, we finally don't have to listen to the awkward conversation between Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess. That's really fucking enough. What are they talking about? When women gather together, shouldn't they be talking about which jewelry store opened in the capital? What kind of beautifying dishes did Kai-Dai Veranda come out with? Shouldn't it be like this? Look at how Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess were awkwardly chatting about all sorts of things. Their thoughts were flying too fast. Princess Consort Jing held a woman's hand and walked in together intimately. Everyone felt that it was a bit strange. Everyone knew that Princess Consort Zhang's appearance was average. Moreover, her forehead was narrow and slightly sunken. Her nose was sharp and narrow, but her mouth wasn't small. Saying that her appearance was average was a bit of a compliment. Actually, she was just a bit ugly. Princess Consort Zhang's naturally harsh and merciless appearance usually attracted a lot of gossip for her. What she disliked the most in her life was walking together with beautiful girls. But today, the girl beside her was graceful and elegant. She was wearing a long white dress that wrapped around her chest, which made her skin look as delicate as milk. Arbor looked at them coldly. To be precise, she was looking at the girl beside Princess Consort Zhang on the top of her head. She recognized this hairpin. It should be said that she had a very deep impression of this hairpin. This 5 fortune jade hairpin was Shi Yongqian's favorite. She wore it every day and couldn't part with it no matter where she went. Arbor clenched her fists tightly. Her gaze was cold as she stared at the girl in white fluttering clothes in front of her. Shi Yongqian. Long time no see. I'm back. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Shi Yongqian felt like she was being stared at by a poisonous snake. Her long brows furrowed slightly. She inadvertently raised her head and looked in the direction of that sharp gaze. What entered her sight was a young girl who was as delicate as jade porcelain. When she saw the young girl's appearance, she couldn't help but be slightly dazzled. Shi Yongqian originally thought that she was fair and beautiful enough, and her skin was delicate enough, but it turned out that there was no comparison at all. Now that she stood in front of the little girl, she was immediately outshone. The beauty and milk-white skin that she was so proud of was not even worth mentioning in front of this little girl. Shi Yongqian took a deep breath and did her best to maintain a smiling appearance. Following Princess Consort Zhang's bow to Princess Consort Kong, the two sisters said in a soft voice, "Greetings to Princess Consort Kong." Princess Consort Kong nodded and had them rise out of unfamiliarity. She then held Xiao Mu's hand, and her expression turned into one of familiarity and intimacy. "Child, meet your sister-in-law, Princess Consort Zhang. Her husband, King Zheng, is the adopted son of the great emperor. His name is Mo Shikong. This should be the first time the two of you have met. Greetings, Crown Princess." Princess Consort Zhang's eyes flickered slightly as she greeted her with a smile. "Greetings, Xing Wangfei." Since Princess Consort Zhang was her sister-in-law in name, Arbor naturally wouldn't let her perform a full salute to avoid giving people an excuse for being arrogant and rude, which would give people a reason to gossip. Arbor stepped forward and also returned a half salute. "Greetings, Crown Princess." Shi Yongqian, who was at the side, also hurriedly followed suit and curtsied. However, she had always been conceited about her family background and had an extremely arrogant personality. She automatically straightened up after squatting for less than half a second. This kind of salute was merely a formality. Generally, no one would make things difficult for a noble daughter of an aristocratic family. Who knew? Who allowed you to stand up? 10 o'clock. Chapter 25-36. Shi Yongqian was taken aback. She almost suspected that the Crown Princess was talking to her. The crown princess actually used such an icy tone to talk about her, the Sher family's second miss. Ignorant of etiquette. Arbor said coldly, Caixio, teach her. Caixio immediately walked up and demonstrated a salute. Greetings to the crown princess. The young crown princess nodded and gestured for Caixio to stand up. She then turned to look at the stupefied Shi Yongqian. Unruly. Start over. Everyone. Princess Consort Kong silently stifled her laughter and tried wiping her lips with a handkerchief. She chuckled softly and said, Second Miss Shi, the crown princess is talking to you. Why aren't you responding? You really don't know etiquette. Shi Yongqian's charming face flushed red, and she looked incredulously at the crown princess who was looking directly at her. The young crown princess had slapped her left cheek in front of all the madams and noble ladies, then slapped her right cheek with the back of her hand. Shi Yongqian's back stiffened as she stood motionlessly in front of the little stoic. Most of the people in the hall were also silently watching the show. At this moment, the sounds of whispering increased. Most of the people who could sit with Princess Consort Kong in this main hall were madams with status in the royal court. Their husbands' family's power was ranked among the top in the imperial capital. These women were mostly slick and sly. Seeing that this second Miss Shi had somehow offended the young crown princess and was targeted by her, how could she possibly say something to draw hatred? Moreover, this Shi family was ranked last among the 6 great patrician families, but they were very high profile in their conduct. They tried to curry favor with the powerful and had unclear connections with the royal court, so they were very disliked. Not only did they rush to marry their eldest daughter, Shi Yongyan, to Xingwang as a consort, but they also repeatedly used Xingwang's name to secretly deal with some disobedient courtiers. She really didn't know how this family could stretch their hands so far. Shi Yongqian saw that no one was speaking up for her, and Princess Consort Jing standing next to her was completely stunned. She couldn't help but bite her lips in grievance. She bowed and said, How did my daughter offend the crown princess to cause the crown princess to treat my daughter like this? The young crown princess didn't reply. She just stared coldly at the woman in front of her. In his previous life, she was such a high-spirited woman. Now, she actually revealed such a timid appearance like a little white rabbit. He really knew how to act. If he didn't know what kind of personality this woman had, he would have really been deceived by her. In this life, they met several years earlier. At this time, Shi Yongqian was only a 17-year-old girl. Compared to her ruthless and arbitrary style in his previous life, she was much more tender. Arbor slightly pursed his lips and swept a glance at Shi Yongqian's uneasy face. He turned and helped Princess Consort Kong sit down, and he also sat down next to her. Shi Yongqian gritted her teeth and half-squatted, maintaining a saluting posture. However, her fingertips had already pierced into her palms. What a domineering and rude crown princess. She had just returned to the capital, yet she was like a shrew, stirring up trouble everywhere. The emperor hadn't even acknowledged her status, yet she dared to be so shameless as to put on airs and punish her. She really wanted to see when this bearing fangs and brandishing claws woman would fall from the crown princess divine altar. If such a day came, Shi Yongqian tightly gritted her teeth. That day would be the day she took revenge and consigned this woman to eternal damnation. Miss Shi, are you cursing this crown princess by gritting your teeth? Chapter 25-37. Shi Yongqian's expression stiffened, and she crouched there, feeling extremely uncomfortable all over. The little stoic sat there and gazed at her coldly. As expected, your Shi family is quite capable. You don't even respect the Eastern Palace. Then presumably, His Majesty is nothing more than this in your hearts. Shi Yongqian's heart abruptly chilled, and Princess Consort Jing, who was snickering on the side, couldn't help but stiffen. She hastily walked up and said with a smile, "The crown princess really knows how to joke. Yongqian is young and doesn't know proper etiquette. I hope that the crown princess won't take offense." "How old?" Princess Consort Jing couldn't help but be stunned. Why did she feel like this little crown princess's thoughts were jumping around? She almost couldn't keep up with her speech patterns. 17 years old. Yongqian is only 17 years old after all. This crown princess is 15 years old. Everyone, the madams who didn't have a good relationship with the Shi family all along, couldn't help but snigger. They really wanted to ask Princess Consort Jing if this slap in the face was fast. She had just said she was young, but who would have expected that the little crown princess was even younger? Even though she was young, she still couldn't disregard proper etiquette. The little crown princess's meaning was very clear. The little crown princess maintained her small face and said dryly, "Age doesn't represent everything. Many times, it really isn't easy to continue teaching when one's foundation is crooked. For example, your Shi family." She mocked coldly, "It can be seen from this miss that your upbringing is truly lacking." Everyone, Shi Yongqian was so infuriated that her nose was about to become crooked. How could she endure it now? She suddenly straightened her body. "Crown Princess, are you taking advantage of your position to bully others?" However, when she abruptly stood up from her crouching position, Shi Yongqian's legs turned to jelly, and she involuntarily swayed. Qiao Mu suddenly flared up, slapping the small sandalwood table next to her with a backhand. Her charming face was as cold as a frosty snowy night as she expressionlessly asked, "Where are the Crown Prince Consort's personal guards?" Aunt Jing's eyelids twitched violently. Ever since the young Crown Princess had made things difficult for second Miss Shi, she had felt that things were developing in a strange direction. As expected. It hasn't even been 3 minutes. Then something happened. Bang bang bang. A few large holes suddenly appeared on the roof, and 7 or 8 figures flew down from above. They knelt on one knee in front of the crown princess and said respectfully in unison, "Here." Madame Zhongli hurriedly stood up with the young madam's help. The corner of her mouth twitched twice. The rest of the people also had a dumbfounded expression as they looked at these elite guards who suddenly jumped down from the roof. Could it be that these people had been guarding the crown princess all this time? Was it the crown prince's men? "Tie her up." Arbor pointed at Shi Yongqian and said with a cold gaze, "Second Miss Shi has lost her composure in front of the crown princess. She is impolite and immoral. Drag her out and give her 10 lashes to clear her head." Everyone, Shi Yongqian was really anxious this time. When she saw the guards rushing up to tie her up, she couldn't help but put up a strong front and said, "How dare you? See if I dare or not." Arbor smirked coldly. When she stared at her, Shi Yongqian felt that this young crown princess seemed to have a trace of abnormality. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she felt that the young crown princess was like a venomous snake that could pounce on her at any time and bite her throat. "Let me go. Let me go." Shi Yongqian struggled and exclaimed, "Eldest sister. Eldest sister, save me." Chapter 2538. A trace of hesitation flashed across Princess Consort Zhang's face. She had never liked this second sister of hers, but now that the two sisters represented the Shi family's reputation, leaving her in the lurch would only make others think that she was cold-hearted. She would definitely be in a bad mood if those gossipy women gossiped about her. Princess Consort Jing frowned. She slightly eased that sharp and unkind expression of hers and forced a smile as she said to Arbor, "Crown Princess, my younger sister was too agitated just now, that's why her words were so extreme and offended the Crown Princess. Please be magnanimous and forgive her." Sir Jojo coldly replied, "I don't want to be magnanimous." Everyone, what was going on? The little crown princess looked like she was going to spit on the heavens and earth the moment she entered the room, and without any warning, she started attacking that unlucky second miss of the Sher family. Yet Princess Consort Kong couldn't help but laugh out loud. She thought to herself, this really is a soft and adorable little bun. Look, even when she's angry, she's especially interesting. Princess Consort Zhang's expression also turned ugly. She said with a cold face, although you are the crown princess, we have always been in China. But in our divine continent, we have always been somewhat tolerant of the strong. My second sister, Yongqian, is at least a 5th-level spiritual master with a 5th-level spiritual fire. Princess Consort Jing harumphed and said, in our divine continent, it's not easy for females to cultivate. My second sister's talent can be considered pretty good. Arbor rolled her eyes. What are you rambling on about? Drag her out. Beat her. The most annoying thing was to talk for so long without getting to the main point. Who has the patience to listen to you blabber on? Do you think you're a flower that needs to bloom? Everyone was dumbfounded. Did the little crown princess really not understand, or was she pretending not to? Wasn't Princess Consort Jing talking to her about some customary rules in the divine continent? Generally, divine realm experts above the 10th level were exempted from kneeling in front of the emperor. Of course, this Shi Yongqian was only a 5th-level spiritual master. Sorry, she was thousands of miles away from being a great divine master. Although Princess Consort Jing was a bit nonsensical, this little crown princess in front of them clearly wasn't someone who followed the rules. They really wanted to ask, what kind of family could raise such a freak? How could Shi Yongqian be a match for the crown prince's guards? What level 5 soul master? In front of a row of level 10 great soul masters, she definitely wouldn't be able to resist. In addition, Shi Yongqian had always been a prideful person in front of others. She wouldn't easily get into a fight and ruin her image, hence, the 2 crown prince's personal guards easily subdued second Miss Shi. They took out hemp ropes from their inner worlds and tied the second young miss up. Then, they dragged her out of the door. This unforeseen event happened too quickly. By the time Shi Yongyan regained her senses, her second sister had already been dragged to the door. Shi Yongyan's harsh face immediately contorted. She shouted at the top of her lungs, "How dare you!" Arbor looked at her as if she was an idiot. What was there to be afraid of? Wasn't it already being done? Was there something wrong with this Princess Consort Zhang's eyesight, or was there something wrong with her brain? Why did she keep asking such retarded questions? Princess Consort Zhang was about to be angered to death by the little stoic. She really had never seen such an arrogant and unreasonable person. She was actually the crown princess. Oh! My heavens, Princess Consort Jing rolled her eyes fiercely in her mind. If Sir Jojo knew, he would definitely slap her to death. What arrogant and unreasonable nonsense! Sir Jojo was the most reasonable little lady in the world. Chapter 2539. Eldest sister, save me, eldest sister. Shi Yongqian was a little scared now, and she kept shooting looks at Princess Consort Jing. Princess Consort Jing looked back at the direction she was winking at and quickly said to Madame Zhongli, if anything happens to my second sister in your residence. What she meant was that even if they couldn't find trouble with the Eastern Palace, the Shi family could still find trouble with the Zhongli residence. Madame Zhongli's expression changed slightly, and she glared at Princess Consort Jing rather angrily. Princess Consort Jing was a classic example of biting at anyone she saw, dragging people down with her. However, the Zhongli residence wasn't to be trifled with. Princess Consort Jing smiled at Madame Zhongli. Madame Zhongli thought for a moment, then quickly stepped forward and bowed to Arbor. Crown Princess, it was just a small misunderstanding just now. What do you think? Should we let second miss off the hook? After all, if word of this spreads that you, the crown princess, reprimanded second miss Sure in our Zhongli residence, it won't be good for the crown princess reputation. If word got out that the crown princess of the Eastern Palace was bossy, domineering, and unreasonable, it naturally wouldn't be good for her reputation. Although her words were reasonable, there was a hint of threat in them. Lord Xiao Qiao's cold and silent gaze swept over that Madame Zhongli. A cold smile that didn't seem like a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. I believe that everyone knows about this Crown Prince Consort's actions on Changle Street the moment I entered the capital yesterday. Are there any rumors today? Everyone in the noble circle knew about what happened on Changle Street. They all knew that the little Crown Princess wasn't someone to be trifled with. What was both unexpected and expected was that not a single rumor dared to circulate in the capital today. I even dared to teach the saintess of the temple a lesson. Do you think I wouldn't dare to teach this insignificant second miss of the Sure family a lesson? Everyone was instantly speechless. 30 lashes. If you dare to utter another word, you'll add 10 more lashes. Arbor casually found a suitable whip from her inner world and threw it to the guard. Hit. With the sound of a gust of wind, the whip landed on second young Mistress Sure's body with a whoosh, causing her to let out a heart-wrenching scream. You dare to hit me. You dare to hit me. Sure Yongqian's eyes widened in disbelief as she glared at Arbor. She didn't know if her eyes were playing tricks on her, but she clearly saw a trace of coldness and satisfaction in the little crown princess' eyes the moment the whip fell. She actually enjoyed watching him get beaten up. This person must be a pervert. The crown prince of the Eastern Palace actually married such a vicious and twisted psychopath. She really wanted to tear this woman apart. However, his body was tied to the tree, and his spiritual energy was suppressed by someone else. There was no room for resistance, and he didn't even have the ability to use his spiritual energy to protect his body. When the whip landed on her body, it was as if it was lashing her heart, her lungs, and her internal organs. Ah! Sure Yongqian screamed. Her scream was so tragic that it startled some of the noble ladies who were playing in the garden. The left Prime Minister's wife had just arrived at the entrance of Zhongli's residence and alighted from the carriage when she heard such a shocking scream. The sound seemed to have come from the main courtyard. She raised her head to look in that direction and couldn't help but frown. What was going on? The servant who welcomed the guests seemed a little embarrassed. She hurriedly covered it up and led Madame Chen and Miss Chen into the courtyard. Baojia, don't be so willful anymore. Madame Chen exhorted. Chapter 2540. There was a sweet smile on Chen Baojia's pretty little face as she held her mother's hand and said coquettishly, "Mother, what are you talking about? You make it sound like I'm causing trouble all the time." Sigh. Madame Chen sighed. You have to take what your grandaunt told Mama to warn you yesterday to heart, okay? There are some people that we can't casually deal with. Madame Chen said seriously, don't make trouble for the Chen estate and your father. Chen Baojia was still smiling and nodding her little head repeatedly, looking extremely obedient. Madame Chen had just arrived at the entrance of the inner courtyard with her daughter when they saw a smiling woman leading two girls towards them. Madame Chen. Concubine Sure smiled and bowed to the left Prime Minister's wife. Madame Chen couldn't help but be startled. Why are you here? Where's your Madame Mu? Sure Huixin's face tightened, and she secretly suppressed the anger that was surging up. She said with a fake smile, Madame had a headache early this morning, so Huixin brought the two children over to join in the fun. Madame Chen nodded and didn't say anything else. She pulled her daughter and walked past Sure Huixin. Sure Huixin was even more dissatisfied. She knew that these so-called official wives looked down on her, who was born as a concubine, but was this what she wanted? Although she was born in the Shi family, one of the 6 great aristocratic families, she was only a concubine's daughter from the 3rd branch after all. She had already racked her brains to find a good marriage for herself. With her status, it was naturally impossible for her to marry into the Mu estate as the official wife. But what if that woman, Mu Qingya, happened to die of illness? Then whether she had the chance to be promoted to the official wife was another matter. If one day she became the wife of the Mu estate's master, gritting her teeth, concubine Shi forced a smile and followed Madame Chen and her daughter into the main courtyard. The moment they stepped into the courtyard, the smell of fresh blood wafted into their noses. Madame Chen and Shi Huixin couldn't help but be stunned. When the two saw the situation in the courtyard, they were even more stunned. Weren't they here to attend the plum blossom banquet? Why was there such a bloody scene? Mother, it seems to be cousin. Mu Royun tugged at Shi Huixin's sleeve in shock and pointed at the woman who was tied under the tree in the courtyard. Her head was drooping and her body was covered in whip wounds. What? Shi Huixin was shocked. She raised her head to take a closer look, and her heart skipped a beat. Was it really the second daughter of the 1st branch, Shi Yongqian? TSK. The arrogant second young mistress of the 1st branch would also have such a day. What a joke. Her relationship with the 1st branch had never been good, so she naturally had no intention of helping. In any case, she was just a lowly concubine mother and couldn't be of much help. The purpose of her visit today was mainly to bring Qiao Yingchen to broaden her horizons and see more of the clan relatives and influential officials. She didn't have to act like a country bumpkin entering the city all day long. A thought flashed through Shi Huixin's mind, and she reached out to pull over Qiao Yingchen, who had been cowering behind her the entire time and whose eyes kept darting around. She took a few steps forward and smiled at Madame Zhongli, whose expression was unsightly. Mu Estate's Shi Huixin greets Madame Zhongli. Madame Zhongli swept her a glance. She was feeling vexed, so her attitude was a bit irritated. All right. No need to be so courteous. Stay at the side. Madame Zhongli had seen this concubine Shi a few times. She was very good at currying favor. She usually didn't find her very annoying, but today, she felt that she was a bit of an eyesore. Chapter 2541. Can't you tell that I'm vexed by this unpresentable thing? Shi Huixin quickly put on a fawning smile and pulled Qiao Yingchen to her side. She said to Madame Zhongli with a smile, Madam, let me introduce you. This is the young lady our Mu family found not long ago after wandering outside for many years. Her name is Mu Qiao. Madam, please meet her. Jojo, hurry up and greet Madam. Madame Zhongli's sword-like gaze shot towards Qiao Yingchen and Shi Huixin. She was racking her brains to deal with the matter of the Shi family's second young lady. How could she have the leisure to listen to Shi Huixin's nonsense and meet the Mu family's long-lost daughter? What the hell did the Mu family's long-lost daughter have to do with her? This concubine Shi just had to come up with such a critical juncture and forcefully introduce her. Was this how concubine Shi's brain worked? Wasn't it too funny to act like this? Qiao Yingchen was intimidated by Madame Zhongli's aura. She was so frightened that her legs went limp and she fell to the ground. She trembled as she kowtowed and shouted, Mu Qiao greets Madame Zhongli, Mu Qiao greets Madame Zhongli. Everyone was speechless. What kind of situation was this? Didn't concubine Shi introduce her as the Mu family's young lady? Why was she acting like a soft-footed shrimp that couldn't be presentable and bowing so respectfully to Madame Zhongli? It was laughable to not know etiquette, but excessive etiquette was even more laughable. Chen Baojia giggled while covering her handkerchief. Mu Royun, who was standing to the side, was also stunned. Then, her face flushed red from embarrassment. She wanted nothing more than to kick this shameless thing to death. Concubine sure didn't get angry. Instead, the smile on her face deepened. The more Mu Qiao, this unpresentable thing, became famous and spread in the imperial capital, the better it was for her, right? Madame Zhongli was stunned. She glanced disdainfully at Xiao Ying-chen on the ground. She secretly despised her, but she put on an amiable expression. Miss Mu, you don't have to be so respectful. You should quickly get up. Xiao Ying-chen was so panicked that she broke out in cold sweat. She knelt on the ground and turned her head to glance at Concubine Shi. Seeing Concubine Shi nod at her with a smile, Xiao Ying-chen finally let out a sigh of relief. Her legs were weak as she struggled to prop herself up. Madame Zhongli looked down on her even more, but she didn't show it on her face. Instead, she said gently, Miss Mu, please go to the side first. Xiao Ying-chen nodded. In an instant, he seemed to have sensed something. Xiao Ying-chen only felt a gust of cold wind blow past her neck. She suddenly turned her head and met a pair of dark eyes. The little girl seemed to be baring her fangs at her, and she was so shocked that she took a few steps back. When he took a closer look, there were no fangs. The stoic face was currently looking at her with a tranquil expression, faint traces of mockery and ridicule hanging from the corners of her lips. Xiao Ying-chen felt as if she had run 700 to 800 meters, and her heart started to pound uncontrollably. Her pupils suddenly shrank, and she subconsciously took 2 steps back, forcefully suppressing the scream that was about to burst out of her throat. Why was she here? Why is that damned girl Arbor here? She wouldn't forget this damned stoic face even if she died. It was this damned girl who opposed her at every turn. Ever since she was young, she wanted to snatch everything from her. She wanted to snatch everything from her. She didn't have the slightest bit of respect for her older sister. This selfish woman, why did she come to the Divine Province? She couldn't be here to snatch away her identity as a miss of the Mu family and snatch away the happy life that belonged to her, right? Chapter 2542. She thought about how she might wake up from her beautiful dream in the blink of an eye. The moment she woke up, she might return to Quoto Village, that ghastly and eerie place filled with a terrifying aura. She would have to accompany her mother and Song to gnaw on tree bark and roast loaches. She couldn't help but feel nauseous, and her entire body started trembling. Why are you glaring at me? Xiao Ying-chen suddenly launched an attack, pointing a finger at Arbor. Everyone was flabbergasted. What was going on? Was there something wrong with this Mu residence's young lady's brain? What kind of lunatic was she to actually pick a fight with the young crown princess? You didn't see the terrifying scene of the young crown princess picking a fight with the Shi family's second young lady just now, right? If you didn't see it, then you're out of luck. Of all the people she could pick a fight with, she just had to pick a fight with the crown princess. If she wasn't crazy, then what was? Arbor suddenly revealed a faint smile at her. It was really faint, but in Xiao Ying-chen's eyes, it was as if a life-reaping king of hell was waving at her. Like a lioness protecting her food, she pounced at Arbor, wanting to press her to the ground and tear her apart. Everyone, what happened? Where am I? Looks like this Mu residence's young lady isn't crazy. She's probably beyond cure. She was actually so stupid as to pounce on the crown princess. Who gave her the guts to be so arrogant? Although more than half of the people present didn't think highly of this crown princess, it was already an indisputable fact that the crown prince married the crown princess in the lower star domain. No matter what they thought, they had to at least put up a decent front. But was this Mu residence's young lady having a stroke in her head? Or was she suddenly possessed? Shi Huixin was also dumbfounded. She wanted to bring Xiao Ying-chen out to meet people, so the more stupid Xiao Ying-chen was, the more she would like her to be. But even if she was stupid, could she not behave so abnormally? This situation was inexplicably out of her control, wasn't it? Why did she suddenly throw herself at a little girl? Sure, Huixin had actually seen Jojo's portrait before, but it was drawn by a shoddy artist. It was very different from the real Jojo. At first glance, Sure Huixin didn't get a clear look, and her line of sight was blocked by Xiao Ying-chen, who had pounced over to cause trouble for the little crown princess. As a result, Sure Huixin didn't recognize her for a moment. Bitch, you want to fight with me for everything, you want to snatch everything from me. Why don't you just go and die? At this moment, Xiao Ying-chen was completely seized by a terrifying fear. She fell into a crazy obsession, thinking that Arbor must be here to steal the identity of the Mu family's daughter from her. How could she let her take it away? How could she allow herself to return to the lower star field that gnawed on tree bark and grass and was filled with terrifying monsters? The moment she saw Mr. Jojo, the stupid string in her head snapped. She was too terrified. She wanted to eliminate the source of her fear, which was Sir Jojo. Jojo was also a little surprised. She didn't even freaking make a move to cause trouble for Xiao Ying-chen, right? This Xiao Ying-chen was like an idiot, throwing herself to death. No wonder everyone looked at her as if she was a lunatic. Where did she get the confidence to think that she could pounce on Sir Jojo and press him to the ground to beat and bite him? Bam! Arbor raised her leg and swept it across. Xiao Ying-chen retreated at twice the speed. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.